void has galaxies.
Truth of our universe is
For decades, scientists have struggled to explain how something like the Boötes void, is that it's the result of smaller voids merging over time.
We have been taught to think of this
Galaxies are
void as a
constantly
passive
moving,
backdrop, a
driven by
silent space
gravity in
upon
our
which the
measurements,
cosmic drama
and perhaps
unfolds.
solve the mystery
It is the
of why
definition of
our
nullity,
estimates
the
of the
canvas of
universe's
creation
growth
assumed to
rate
be utterly,
don't always
completely
match
and
up is
fundamentally
beyond
empty.
comprehension. A scale
But
so
what if
immense
this assumption,
that
an
language
idea
itself
so
falls
intuitive
short.
it feels like common sense
But what
is
if this emptiness
spectacularly
isn't
wrong?
just a
What if
cosmic,
the
though
vacuum of
entirely
space,
speculative,
the
that
deepest
such a
silence we can
civilization
conceive, is
could
not
have the
silent
means
at all?
to
What if it
manipulate
is
the
in
structure
fact
of the
roaring
universe
with
itself,
secret energy, a
creating
seething
voids like
ocean
the
of phantom
Boötes
particles
void
that flicker
for
in
reasons
and
we
out of
can't yet understand.
existence, shaping the very
While there's no
fabric of
evidence
reality.
to support
This
the
is a
idea of an
story
art
that
travels through
challenges our
space,
perception of everything.
this process allows scientists to
Suggesting that
measure
the most
how
powerful
fast
and
the universe
mysterious
is
forces
growing.
in the cosmos arise,
However,
not
there's
from
a puzzle,
something, but from the
immense power.
ferociously active
These
heart of
voids have a
nothing itself.
secret
We
influence,
are about to journey
subtly
into that
shaping the
nothing to see
distribution of
tangible
galaxies
proof of its hidden
and
life,
guiding the
and to
emptiness
uncover
of
a
these
subtle,
cosmic
almost
voids.
unbelievable force
Supervoids
known as the
also play a
Casimir
big
Effect,
role in
a
understanding
whisper
how
from
the
the void
universe
that
is structured, and
proves it was
learn more
never
about
empty
how
at all.
galaxies formed and how
To
they are
truly
spread across the
appreciate
universe.
seismic shift this idea
But supervoids
represents,
don't
you
just
must
tell us
first
where
undertake a journey into the heart of that perceived emptiness. Imagine we could strip away the universe layer
First of
by
all,
layer.
this is
We
not an
begin
image
here
of
in
the
this room.
coincidence.
We remove
What if the
air
universe is
molecule
trying
by
to tell us
molecule
something
until we
in
have
these
a
silent,
perfect classical
endless
vacuum,
voids?
a void
And more
defined
importantly,
by what it
the
lacks.
Boötes void could be
We
the
then
result
expand
of
our
an
view,
ancient
moving out
event,
beyond our
one we
atmosphere,
can't
where the
see,
tenuous
but that
breath of
left
our
a
world
lasting
gives way
mark
to
on
the
this
near
this
perfect
void
vacuum
and
of
others like it
interplanetary space.
could be
Even
connected to
here,
the
it is not
idea of
truly
alternate
empty.
universes
The sun
or
bathes this
dimensions.
region in a constant
It sounds
stream of
far-fetched.
particles, the solar wind,
Galaxies
and floods
don't
it with
just
light.
pop up
A
randomly.
torrent of photons
They tend to
carrying
cluster
energy
together in
across the
patterns,
vastness.
forming
It
what
is a
we call
space filled
the
with
cosmic
radiation
web.
dust.
Void spans hundreds of millions of light years, far exceeding what current models can easily explain. Its existence, cosmic, something we are yet to understand. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Here's completely dark to our eyes. Solving its mysteries could paradoxically shine a light on outstanding problems in our theories of the universe's D regions, may highlight gaps in our understanding of dark matter and its gravitational influence on cosmic scales. While not impossible, as cosmological laboratories, they offer insights into the fundamental nature of dark matter and dark energy. Revealed details about these mysteries may only be uncovered through careful exploration and study of these expansive regions of emptiness, this nothingness. It is within these voids that the true nature of the universe's structure and evolution can be discerned. Moreover, instead, attention turns to the silent expanses of voids. Voids hold keys to unlocking dark energy secrets, tiny variations where there was a slightly higher concentration of matter in one place and slightly less in another. These minuscule differences play in a state that does not promote the formation of new galaxies. Therefore, the absence of significant supernova and AGN feedback in cosmically cool and undisturbed. As a result, there may be insufficient energy to prevent the gas from simply diffusing away or remaining regions. These cosmic voids dominate the universe, meaning most of it is nearly empty. Within these voids, you might find a few small gas and drive it outward, preventing it from collapsing under its own gravity to form new stars or galaxies. This process, known as small dim dwarf galaxies, and a thin mix of radiation and particles, yet they remain largely empty, devoid of star regions. As a result, voids may remain relatively empty over cosmic timescales because the gravitational. Locally, however, its effects are masked by the gravitational pull of stars, gas, dust, and other matter in our vicinity. But the surprising aspect is that, according to the laws of cosmology, such a giant void shouldn't exist in the first place. The cosmos southern local supervoid and the Eridanus supervoid. However, none is as big as the Boötes supervoid. Sometimes, evidence suggests that our galaxy is inside a cosmic void, a vast expanse of relatively empty space. Next of the Buddha's void, we can draw parallels to urban development dynamics on Earth. Imagine the void as a neighborhood that, in the distant mechanisms, can have profound implications. Without the heating and disruption caused by supernovae and AGNs, the gas in voids may remain relatively is just one of billions in our universe. It resides within a complex environment shaped by various cosmic structures and consumed resources over time. So too might advanced civilizations have once flourished within the void. They could have tapped gravitational attraction is weaker. This can result in slower or less efficient formation of galaxies, clusters, and other cosmic structures compared to dense, resembling gaps in Swiss cheese or the openings in a spider's web. It stretches hundreds of millions of light years across. These voids are the true.
Because to be perfectly placid would be to have a definite energy of zero, and that is the one thing nature will not allow. The vacuum, therefore, must shimmer with a constant, irreducible minimum amount of energy. It must be alive. This foundational energy of space is not just a placid pool. It is a chaotic, roiling sea of potential, often called the quantum foam or zero-point energy. From this energy, particles can spontaneously burst into existence, borrowing their reality from the void itself. These are not the familiar, stable
particles. It is the single
particles
most successful theory of the universe ever conceived.
They are virtual particles,
towering intellectual achievement
that live on borrowed time. A particle and its antiparticle counterpart, an electron and a positron, for example, can leap into reality together, exist for a fleeting, imperceptible instant, and then annihilate one another, returning their borrowed energy to the vacuum, before the universe can even register their presence. They are like fleeting thoughts in the mind of the cosmos. They exist for a time span so infinitesimally brief that it is physically impossible to capture one and observe it directly. The vacuum of space, at its most fundamental level, is a pandemonium of these quantum ghosts, a blizzard of particles appearing and disappearing in a ceaseless, frantic dance. This is not some fringe, speculative idea. This seething ocean of virtual particles is a cornerstone of modern
crucial
physics.
test involves
It
motion.
is woven into our
should
most
see a
successful
coherent
theories
outflow,
like quantum
a bulk flow of
electrodynamics,
galaxies streaming
explaining
away
with
from the void
breathtaking
center.
accuracy how light and matter interact. It is the invisible static of the universe, the background hum of existence. For decades, physicists accepted this strange reality on faith, a mathematical necessity that made their equations work. The quantum foam was a beautiful, powerful concept, but it remained a ghost story, a theoretical phantom haunting their calculations. How could you ever prove it was real? How do you touch a ghost? How do you measure the substance of nothing? You would need a way to make this invisible virtual world cast a real, tangible shadow in our own. You would need to somehow force the void to push back. The first clue to solving this profound puzzle did not come from a cosmologist staring into the abyss, but from an industrial physicist pondering a far more earthly problem. His name was Hendrik Casimir, and in the late 1942, working at the renowned Philips Research Labs in the Netherlands, he was not trying to redefine the nature of emptiness. He was trying to understand why certain microscopic particles suspended in liquids, like colloids in mayonnaise or paint, had a strange tendency to stick together. He and his colleague Theodor Polder were investigating the long-range attractive forces between atoms and molecules known as van der Waals
As the
forces.
fleet of Sentinels orbits high
These
above,
forces arise
the
from the
ESA's
temporary
Gaia Observatory
fluctuations
is
in the
busy
electron
charting the
clouds
precise
surrounding neutral atoms. For a fleeting moment, one side of an atom might become slightly more negative, and the other slightly more positive, creating a tiny temporary magnet that can induce a similar effect in a neighboring atom, drawing them together. Their theory worked beautifully when the atoms were very close. But as they calculated the effects for particles separated by larger distances, still microscopic but vast on
It could
an
even
atomic
be the
scale,
first sign
their
that
equations
Einstein's
grew
theory of
monstrously
gravity is
complex,
incomplete
and
on the
worse,
scale
they
of the
failed to
entire
match
universe.
experimental observations. Something was missing. Some other unknown
The
force
simulation
seemed to be at
output
play
shows
in
a
the
universe
microscopic
that perfectly
world, a
matches the
subtle but
cosmic web
persistent
we observe.
attraction that their models could not explain. The world of industrial colloids seemed a universe away from the esoteric realm of quantum vacuum energy. But science often finds its greatest truths at the intersection of seemingly unrelated fields. A frustration in a corporate lab was about to become the key that would unlock one of the deepest secrets of the cosmos. The breakthrough came, as it so often does, not from a calculation but from a conversation. During a visit to Copenhagen, Casimir was discussing his frustrating problem with the legendary physicist Niels Bohr, one of the founding fathers of quantum mechanics. After listening intently, Bohr, with his characteristic insight, made a cryptic but profound suggestion. He mused that perhaps Casimir was thinking about the problem from the wrong perspective. Perhaps he should stop trying to calculate the complex interactions between countless individual atoms,
does the galaxy density
instead
truly drop off
consider the
around
problem
us?
from the viewpoint of the quantum vacuum, the zero-point energy field that surrounded everything. It was a staggering conceptual leap.
Pushing through the shimmering
what could the ghostly
cosmic
fluctuations
dust,
of the
the
void
veil of our
possibly have to
galaxy
do with
begins to
sticky
thin,
particles in a
revealing
fluid?
the
Yet the
intergalactic
seed of an
void
idea was
beyond.
planted.
You don't
Casimir
look for the
returned
emptiness.
to his work,
you look for
haunted
what
by
isn't
Bohr's
there,
suggestion.
counting galaxies dot by
He
dot,
began to imagine a
constructing
radically
3D model of
simplified,
the universe.
idealized scenario,
The
stripping
simulation
away all the
continues,
complexities
showing the
of
birth of
real-world
galaxies like
materials.
our own,
Imagine
and
he
the
thought
vast,
a perfect
web-like
vacuum
structure of the
completely
modern
devoid of matter, and at a temperature of absolute
From the
zero.
familiar sights
Now
of our
into this
world,
perfect
we pull
nothingness
back
placed
to
two
reveal the
perfectly
true
parallel,
scale of the
perfectly
cosmos.
conducting uncharged metal plates.
To build a true
Classically,
3D
with
map,
no
you
charge
need
and no
depth,
gravity to
measured
speak
by
of, nothing
redshift,
should happen.
the stretching of light across an
The
expanding.
plates should remain perfectly still,
To
utterly
understand the
indifferent to one
crisis,
another,
we
adrift in
zoom
an
out to
inert
the
void.
grandest scale of the
But Casimir
universe,
now saw this
revealing
space
it
with new
not
eyes
as a
through the
random
lens of quantum field theory.
The
The
cosmic
void was not
microwave
empty.
background,
It was a
or
churning sea
CMB,
of virtual
is the
photons
oldest
of all
light we
possible
can
wavelengths
detect.
and energies, constantly popping in and out of
The
existence.
simulation
This
output
ocean of
shows a
virtual
universe that
particles would
perfectly
surround the
matches
plates,
the
battering
cosmic
them
web
from
we
all
observe.
sides. But here was the crucial insight. The space-times between times the two plates was different. It would act as a resonant cavity. Just as a guitar string can only vibrate at specific
gravitational
frequencies,
pull of
its
this
fundamental
unseen
tone
mass
and its
warps
overtones,
our
the
perception.
tiny gap between the plates, could only host virtual photons whose wavelengths fit neatly into that space, an integer number of times. Any virtual photon with a
is a
wavelength
grand
longer
and
than the
elegant
gap simply
narrative,
couldn't form there.
painstakingly
It was
assembled.
excluded.
A
The
story of
space-times
cosmic
outside
order
times
and
the plates, however, had no such restriction.
We cannot see
The
it
infinite
or touch
void could host virtual photons of
presence is
every
known, but
conceivable
only
wavelength. This created a profound
makes up
imbalance.
nearly 70%
The endless ocean of
of
virtual
everything.
particles in the wider universe
invisible
would be pushing
ocean.
on the outside surfaces of the plates
Its
with
true
its full,
triumph is its
unrestrained
ability
energy.
to tell
But
the
on the inside
universe's life
surfaces,
story.
only a select, filtered subset of those virtual particles could exist and push back. There would be more quantum pressure from the outside than from the inside. The result Casimir calculated would be a net force pushing the two plates together. It would be an attraction born not from any property of the metal itself, not its mass, not its charge, but from the shadowed, altered landscape of the quantum vacuum it created. A force from nothing, a palpable pressure exerted by phantom particles. He had found it. He had found a way to make the void cast a shadow. His calculations predicted a force that was exquisitely tiny, almost imperceptibly faint, but it was real and it was measurable. If this force could be detected, it would be the first direct experimental evidence that the vacuum of space was not a tranquil nothing, but a dynamic and powerful entity. It was
This
a prediction
creates a
of
local,
breathtaking
additional
elegance
expansion,
and
a
profound
Hubble,
implications.
a localized surge.
It suggested that the very
Galaxies
geometry
aren't
of
flying
space
through
could
space.
manipulate the energy of the
Space
void,
itself is
transforming the
carrying
chaotic
them
hum of
apart.
quantum foam into a
The
tangible
conclusion
mechanical
challenges
force.
our place
This
in the
prediction,
cosmos
born from
and
an
offers a
industrial puzzle
startlingly
and a
simple
conversation
solution
with
to
the
its
titan of
greatest
physics,
puzzle.
would set the stage for one of the most delicate and challenging experimental quests
This
in the history of
hypothetical
science.
particle would be the
It offered a
ultimate cosmic
tantalizing
hermit.
promise, the ability to reach into the
The
fabric of
Euclid
reality
Space
and
Telescope,
feel the
soaring
pulse of the
through
quantum
space,
world.
is undertaking an
The
even
Casimir
grander
Effect
survey.
was no longer just a theoretical curiosity, it was a challenge, a dare to experimentalists to build an apparatus so sensitive it could measure the push of a ghost.
A colossal
The
bubble of
successful
near
measurement of
nothingness,
this force
a
would
vast
forever shatter our
underdensity
classical
carved
intuition
directly
of
from the
emptiness.
cosmic web.
It would prove once and for all that the void is a
scale of
place
the
of immense
proposed void
potential,
is
a
visualized
reservoir
with
of hidden
graphics.
energy
A
whose
roughly
properties we are
spherical
only
region of
just
space,
beginning to understand.
Our privileged, underdense home
But how
has
could
been
anyone
playing tricks
possibly
on us,
construct plates
skewing
so
our measurements
perfectly
and
smooth,
warping our
align
understanding
them
of
so
the
perfectly
cosmos?
parallel, and measure a force so faint
The
it is
second
dwarfed by
ingredient
even the
appears.
slightest tremor or stray electrical
Cold,
charge?
dark
The
matter.
journey from Casimir's elegant prediction to its final
This is a
triumphant
grand and
verification
elegant narrative,
would be a
painstakingly
multi-decade
assembled,
odyssey of
a story
ingenuity
of
and
cosmic order
perseverance. And along the way, the staggering
archaeology
implications
on a
of this
cosmic
force from nothing
scale.
would begin
As
to
the pins
unfold,
accumulated
echoing
on
from
the
the
map.
microscopic world of nanotechnology to the grandest scales of cosmology. reshaping our understanding of the universe itself. The whisper from the void had been predicted. Now,
The void
all that
is
was
not
left was to
absolute
learn how
nothingness.
to listen. What
Galaxies,
is nothing?
like our own
For millennia, we have wrestled with the concept. It is the canvas upon which we paint existence, the silence between notes of music, the absolute zero against which all things are measured. In the grand theatre of classical physics, the physics of Newton and Maxwell, this nothingness was given
This
a name,
principle
the
is
vacuum.
the bedrock
It was
of modern
envisioned as a
cosmology,
perfect, immutable
the
void,
foundation upon
an
which our
endless
entire
passive stage of
understanding is
absolute
built.
emptiness, utterly devoid of substance, energy, or activity. The universe was a great clockwork mechanism, and the space between its gears was simply
We cannot see
space,
it or touch
an
it.
inert background,
Its
a
presence is
silent
known
bystander
only
to
through
the
its
cosmic
immense
drama of
gravitational
planets,
influence.
stars, and galaxies.
This
idea
is where
was
the
so
quiet work
fundamental,
of
so intuitively
cartographers
correct,
collides
that
with the
when light was
raging
proven to be a
crisis of
wave,
the Hubble
scientists
tension.
felt compelled to fill the void.
This
Waves,
is
as
the
we
cosmic
understood
web,
them, needed a medium to
detailed
travel
map
through.
of the
Sound
universe.
waves need air, ocean waves need water.
The very
So what
conflict
was the
that
medium
threatened to
for
break
light?
our
They called it
understanding
the
may be the
luminiferous
key
ether,
that unlocks a more
an invisible,
nuanced, complex,
undetectable
and
substance
interesting picture
that
of
permeated
reality.
everything, the silent river on which
From a
light
single
journeyed from a
pulsating
distant star
seed,
to your eye.
the cosmic
It was a
void
sophisticated,
expands,
elegant
revealing the
solution to
nascent
preserve the
structure of
classical order, a final attempt to ensure that the vacuum was not truly empty. Great minds constructed elaborate theoretical frameworks for this ether. It had to be impossibly rigid to support light's incredible speed, yet so tenuous that planets could pass through
The
it
map will
without a
tell us
whisper
the
of
strength of
resistance.
its gravitational
The search for
propulsion.
this cosmic
The
ghost
void
became
doesn't
one
push,
of the great
it
quests
simply
of
fails to
19th
pull,
century
creating
science.
a net
At the
outflow.
heart of it was an experiment
We are
of
living through the
profound beauty
pivotal
and
moment of a
simplicity
scientific
conducted by Albert Michelson
revolution.
and Edward
But
Morley.
one thing has already changed
Using a brilliant
forever.
arrangement of mirrors and a beam of light
Central to
split in
this
two,
story is
they
the
sought to
idea of
measure the Earth's
expansion.
motion through the stationary
The
ether,
universe
the
is not
so-called
static.
ether wind.
It is
They expected to see a subtle shift, a tiny
It states the
interference
universe
pattern,
is homogeneous
as one
and
light beam was
isotropic on
slowed
large
by the
scales.
wind,
The same.
the other was not. They ran the experiment again and again with increasing precision, turning their apparatus to catch the wind from any possible direction. Yet the result was always the same. A perfect, unnerving, absolute null. There was no shift,
The
no
problem
interference,
wasn't in our
no
telescopes
wind.
or
The
calculations.
implications of this
The
silent
problem
result
was in
were
our
thunderous.
assumption of where
It
we
was
are.
a beautiful experiment that had failed spectacularly, and in its failure, it shattered one of the central pillars of physics. There was no aether. The grand, invisible ocean did not exist. Light, unlike any wave we had ever known, needed no medium. It could travel through a true, perfect vacuum. For a moment, it seemed the classical vision was vindicated in the most extreme way imaginable. The void was not just empty of conventional matter. It was even emptier than we had dared to believe. It was a realm of pure geometric nothingness, a place of profound
These
silence and
simulations are
inactivity.
our cosmic
But this
laboratories.
confirmation was a fragile one, for on the intellectual
We can
horizons
create a
of Europe,
digital
a
universe with a
revolution
void.
was brewing.
This
A new
involved
science was being
immense
born,
sky
one that would
surveys,
look at this perfect
meticulously
silent
measuring
void
the
and see a
redshift of
raging,
hundreds of
hidden inferno.
This is the work of
This
colossal
new science
galaxy
was quantum
surveys, like
mechanics, and
DESI,
it did not
the Dark
arrive
Energy
quietly.
Spectroscopic
It began
Instrument,
with a crack
atop
in
a
the
mountain in
smooth
Arizona.
facade of classical reality. Max Planck discovered that energy was not a continuous flow like water from a tap, but came in discrete, indivisible packets
Each
called
spectrum
quanta.
is a
The
fingerprint,
universe at its most
telling us a
fundamental
galaxier's
level was
chemical
not a gentle
makeup,
ramp, but a
age,
staircase.
and most importantly, its
This was strange but
Outside the
manageable.
bubble, in the
true
denser
earthquake,
mountain
the
ranges of
idea
the
that would
cosmic
forever
web,
change our
the
conception of
gravitational
nothingness
pull is
came
much
from the mind
stronger.
of a young German
Distance
physicist
is the single
named
hardest thing to
Werner
measure.
Heisenberg.
To do
He
it,
unveiled
astronomers
a principle
built
of
a
such
cosmic
profound
distance ladder,
strangeness it
a
felt more
series
like
of ingenious
philosophy than
steps.
physics. The uncertainty principle. In its essence, it states that there is a fundamental limit to how precisely we can know certain pairs of properties of a particle at the same time.
This is a Type Ia
The more you
supernova,
pin down a
the
particle's
cataclysmic
position,
death
for
of a
example,
white
the
dwarf
less you
star
can
in a
possibly know
binary
about
system.
its momentum,
For a long
and
time,
vice versa.
this was a curiosity.
This was not a
As the
limitation
Hubble
of our
tension
instruments,
grows more
not a
severe,
failure of our measurement
scientists
techniques.
began to wonder if it's
Heisenberg
the key.
argued this was an inherent,
This mysterious,
non-negotiable feature
ghostly
of reality
substance
itself.
outweighs
The
all
universe,
visible
at
matter
its smallest
5
scales,
times over.
is fundamentally fuzzy. A particle doesn't have a single definite position and a single definite momentum. It exists in a haze of probabilities. The cosmos, it turned out, was built not on certainty, but on a foundation of irreducible ambiguity. And this principle had a staggering consequence for the vacuum. Think
These
about what a
faint
perfect
whispers
void
are
would
shown
mean.
to be the
It would be a
primordial
region
sea,
of space with
with
precisely zero energy. Its fields, electric, magnetic, all of them would be perfectly flat, perfectly null. But if you could know that the energy in a
Proponents
region of
counter.
space was
The
exactly
Copernican principle
zero,
is
you
about
would know its
averages.
state with
The cosmic
absolute
web
certainty.
is lumpy. Living in a void is not
You would have
saying we are at the
violated
center
the
of
fundamental
creation.
law of quantum fuzziness. The uncertainty principle forbids such perfect knowledge. Therefore, it forbids a state of perfect nothingness. The energy of any point in
This
space,
assumption,
even in the
the
deepest
cosmological
intergalactic
principle,
void, cannot be
became
zero.
the bedrock
It
of
must
our
fluctuate.
understanding.
It must constantly
We got
churn
the
with a
wrong answer
minimum
because we
non-zero
were
amount
asking
of
from the
energy.
wrong
We
place.
call it the zero
Our
point
location,
energy.
inside a special,
It
empty
is the
region,
universe's
is the key.
baseline hum, the ceaseless tremor in the fabric of reality,
So
the
when we
cost of
look at a
existence
distant
itself.
supernova, we
Suddenly,
see
the
the
cold,
speed from
inert stage
cosmic
of classical
expansion.
physics was transformed. The vacuum was no longer a silent void. It was a seething, boiling cauldron of potential. A quantum foam where energy could bubble up from nothing exist
was
for an
the pivotal
immeasurably
moment.
brief moment and
The
then
challenge
vanish
was
back
laid
into
down
the
to
abyss
the
from which it came.
supercomputers.
This was a place of ferocious activity,
scale of
a
this
hidden
effect is
reality
not
of
trivial.
unimaginable violence and
Calculations
energy
show the
occurring
pull
on
from the
scales
void's
of
edges
time
could
and
account
space
for
so
it.
small that we are utterly blind to it. The
Cosmology's
silence
standard
of the
model
void was
elevates
revealed
this
to be
to
a
a physical
deafening
principle.
roar, a symphony of
universe is
creation and
homogeneous.
annihilation, played out an infinite
But
number
even
of
in
times
this
every
perfect
second
mechanism,
in every cubic
persistent
centimeter of the
whisper of
universe.
doubt
The
begins
classical
to
vacuum was
emerge.
dead. In its place was a quantum ocean teeming with an unseen ghostly life. But what was this life? What were these fleeting apparitions that populated the new void? The answer would come from another quiet genius, a man whose mathematics would give form to the ghosts in the machine. His name was Paul Dirac, a physicist of breathtaking intellect and intuition, whose mind seemed to operate on a plane
Are
adjacent
we
to the rest
truly
of humanity.
cosmic outliers?
In the
living
late
a grand illusion in a bubble of
1922,
near nothing?
he set out to
As the
achieve
white
one of
dwarf
the holy
siphons stellar
grails of
material,
physics,
it approaches
to
the
unite the new
Chandrasekhar
quantum
limit,
mechanics
resulting
with
in a
Einstein's
spectacular
theory
Type
of
Ia
special
supernova.
relativity.
For
The
a
result
few
was an
weeks,
equation
this
of
single
almost
exploding
terrifying
star
power and
outshines
elegance.
its entire host
The
galaxy,
Dirac equation.
blazing with
It
the light of
described the
100
behavior of the
billion
electron with
suns.
stunning precision, accounting for its spin
The
and
void
magnetic
exerts a
properties in a
subtle
way no
gravitational
theory had
influence.
before. It was a
Galaxies
triumph,
outside
a
the void
landmark of
pull on
human
us.
thought. But deep within its mathematical structure, there was something deeply unsettling. A ghost. The equation, like a simple
It felt
quadratic, had
profoundly
two
wrong.
solutions.
A
One
violation
solution
of
described the
everything we
electron
thought we
knew
knew.
and loved, a particle with a familiar negative charge. But the other solution described something else entirely.
They were
It
simply
described a
measuring
particle
different
with the
things.
exact same mass
the
as an
local,
electron,
Or
but with
perhaps
a
it hints
positive
at a new,
charge.
exotic
Most
sterile
bizarrely,
neutrino,
it seemed to
altering
possess
the
a negative
expansion
amount of
history in the
energy.
universe's first few hundred
This
thousand
was
years.
mathematical
The
nonsense
first
in the
ingredient,
classical world.
ordinary,
It would be
visible
like a
matter.
ball rolling
We see
uphill
everything
to
we
gain
know,
speed.
from a chair
Most
to the
physicists
earth, the
dismissed
sun,
it as a
and
mere
glittering
mathematical
stars.
artifact, a flaw in an otherwise beautiful theory. But Dirac was different. He believed that the mathematics of the universe did not lie. If the equation demanded this particle exist, then it must exist. He made a prediction of shocking boldness. He proposed that for every particle in
They
the
had
universe,
uncovered
there
a
exists
structure
a
of almost
corresponding
unimaginable
antiparticle,
scale,
an identical
an
twin
immense
in every
spherical
respect,
region of
except with an opposite charge. This bizarre positive energy solution to his equation was not a ghost. It was a real particle waiting to be discovered.
For thousands
He
of
called it
years,
the positron,
accumulates this
the
stolen mass
anti-electron.
until it reaches
a few years
critical
later, in
threshold.
the cloud chamber
The
experiments of
Chandrasekhar
Carl
limit.
Anderson
The focus
Dirac
shifts
quantum
to our
appeared.
local measurements.
A particle with the
flawed?
mass of an electron curved
Maybe
the
we
wrong way in a
misunderstand
magnetic
its
field,
physics.
revealing its positive charge. Antimatter
But
was
Keenan,
real.
Barger,
The
and
universe,
Cowie
it
offered a
seemed, was
different
haunted
answer.
by its own mirror
What if the
image.
problem isn't the
Dirac's
universe,
discovery provided the
the
crucial
cosmic
key
radar
to
gun
understanding
measuring
the
the
quantum
local
foam.
phenomenon.
How did this
The final
relate to
reading,
the seething
73,
energy of the vacuum?
indicates a
The
significant
uncertainty
temporal variance.
principle allows
Once
for a
calibrated,
curious
these
loophole in the
explosions become
conservation
the
of
final
energy.
rung, allowing us to
It
measure
says you
distances
can borrow
across
a bit of
vast
energy from
stretches
the
of the
vacuum,
cosmos.
as long as you pay it back very, very quickly.
deepens.
The more energy you borrow, the faster you have to return it. And what can you do with that borrowed energy? Thanks to Einstein's E equals
model
mc
predicts
squared,
how a
you can use it
universe
to
with
create
that starting
mass.
recipe
You can
should have
create
expanded,
particles. This is the
making
very
them
heart
powerful,
of the quantum
unambiguous.
vacuum.
Two universes
For
are
an
shown to be
infinitesimal
mutually
moment,
exclusive.
a flash
They cannot
of borrowed
both be
energy
right,
can erupt
highlighting
into
the
a pair
depth of
of
the Hubble
particles, a
tension,
particle
the
and
biggest
its
crisis in
antiparticle.
cosmology.
The focus
An
shifts
electron
to our local
and a positron, for
measurements.
instance. They
Are they
spring into
flawed?
existence from literally
Maybe
nothing.
we
They are
misunderstand
not
its
merely
physics.
potential, they are for a fleeting instant real. We call them virtual particles. They are the living embodiment of the vacuum's fluctuations. They are born together from the foam, live for a time dictated by the uncertainty of their own existence, and then in a flash of annihilation, they find each other and vanish, repaying their energy debt to the void and preserving the cosmic balance. This is the true nature of what you perceive as empty space.
This would alter the fundamental yardstick on the CMB, shifting the entire calculation and moving the early universe. This is not just a scientific assumption.
Here, right
it's
now,
a philosophical
between
one,
your eyes
a declaration of cosmic modesty
infinite
since
number of these
Copernicus.
virtual particle pairs are erupting into being and disappearing again. A ghostly blizzard of matter and antimatter, a phantom dance of existence and non-existence. They are the quantum heartbeat of the cosmos, the source of the fundamental tremor that prevents reality from ever being truly still. They are the hum beneath the silence. And so, by the 1,930 seconds, the revolution was complete. We had journeyed from a universe with a placid, empty stage to one whose very foundation was a chaotic, energetic sea of virtual
CMB
ghosts.
data.
From the elegant failure of Michelson and Morley through the irreducible fuzziness of Heisenberg to the beautiful and terrifying symmetry of Dirac's antimatter physics that painted a new portrait of nothingness. It was a portrait
but each
of
new gear
unimaginable
causes another
activity,
part of the machine
of
to
a
break or
reality
smoke,
far stranger
showing how these new
and more
theories
vibrant
create other
than we had
problems
ever
and have so
conceived.
far failed.
But this grand new vision carried with it an immense and pressing question. This entire structure, this quantum foam teeming with virtual particles, was a product of theory. It was a spectre raised by mathematics. It was beautiful, it was consistent, it was powerful. But was it physically real? If this invisible ocean of fleeting particles truly exists, it cannot be entirely inert. These ghostly apparitions in their brief lives must exert some influence on the world we can see and touch.
Forging the evidence that
Their
will either
collective
vindicate
presence
the
must add up to something tangible. They couldn't just be phantoms in our equations. They had to have a physical consequence. Could this invisible, seething reality manifest a measurable physical force? Could we design an experiment not just to infer the vacuum's energy, but to make it push? The theoretical stage was set for a mind bold enough to ask a deceptively simple question. If you change the shape of the void, can you make it push back? And so the greatest challenge in modern physics was not to discover a new particle, nor to map a distant galaxy. It was to prove that the absolute emptiness of space was in fact an illusion, to demonstrate that the vacuum, the very definition of nothing, concealed a universe of roiling phantom energy.
Run the convergence test.
But
The numbers are holding steady, Doctor.
Measure
It's definitely not a ghost
How could we
in the
build
data
an
this time.
instrument sensitive enough
A
to
view
detect
shifts
the
to a more
fleeting
powerful
breath of
candidate.
particles
A
that
type IA
exist for less
supernova,
time than it
visualized
takes
as
light
the
to cross an
cataclysmic
atom?
death
The
of a
quantum
white dwarf
foam,
star
this
in a binary
seething
system.
underworld of
For a long
reality,
time, this was a
seemed destined
curiosity.
to remain a
As
purely
the Hubble tension grows
mathematical
more severe,
abstraction.
we have to wonder if
Beautiful,
it's the key.
yet ultimately
Their
untestable
measurement is a
artifact
triumph
of our
of ingenuity,
equations.
and it tells
The
a different
universe,
story,
it seemed,
a
was
calmer,
content to
more
keep its
leisurely
deepest
expansion
secret.
of $67.
That is, until an unassuming
By
Dutch
measuring this
physicist
tiny
working
angle
not in the
and knowing
hallowed halls
Earth's
of a
orbit
university,
diameter,
but in the
we use
practical,
trigonometry to
results-driven
calculate the
environment
star's
of a corporate
distance. The
research
cosmological
lab,
principle
stumbled
still
upon an
holds on the
idea
very
of
largest
profound and
scales, but we are
startling
measuring-
elegance.
but we are
His
measuring
name was Hendrik
atmosphere.
Casimir. In
Anomalous
1948, while employed by Philips,
answer,
the electronics
seems,
giant
has
Casimir
been
wasn't
hidden
trying to
in
rewrite
our
our
own
definition of
backyard
nothingness.
all along.
He was tackling a much more mundane problem, the strange sticky behavior of microscopic particles, a phenomenon known as the van der Waals force. It was an industrial headache and nuisance in the manufacturing of delicate components. Yet in wrestling with this earthly puzzle, Casimir would devise a thought experiment so simple, so pure, that it would reach directly into the quantum void and propose a way to feel its pulse. He asked the world to
Now,
imagine
consider
something
our
deceptively
local Hubble
plain.
measurement. We look at nearby
Two perfectly
supernovae.
flat,
We measure their
perfectly
distance
reflective,
and their
and electrically uncharged metal plates. Now place them in a perfect vacuum, an environment utterly devoid of matter, radiation, or any conventional
To
form of
skeptics,
energy.
this feels like
In
a
the
step
classical
backwards,
universe
a
of
return
Isaac
to a
Newton,
pre-Copernican
this is a scene of
mindset,
absolute
a cosmic
stillness.
coincidence of the
Nothing is
highest
there,
order.
so nothing can happen. The plates, perfectly neutral, should feel no electromagnetic attraction or repulsion. They should hang there suspended
With
in
this
an
map, we
eternal
can
silent equilibrium,
stop
completely
guessing.
oblivious to
We
one
can
another.
trace the edge
They
of
are
our
inert
local
objects
underdensity
in an empty
and
stage, a tableau
This
of
is not
cosmic
just a
indifference.
theory.
But
It's a
Casimir was not
testable
thinking in the
hypothesis.
classical world. He was thinking in the bizarre, probabilistic language of quantum mechanics, a language whispered
is
by
the
the vacuum
scientific
itself.
process
His
in
insights
its
spurred
purest,
by a
most
conversation
vibrant
with the
form,
legendary
an
Niels Bohr
argument with
was
The
to stop
discrepancy of
seeing
about
the vacuum
9%
between
could
the
be
plates as
explained by
empty.
our location. The crisis
He
might
saw
just
it
be a
as it
local
truly
affair, a
was,
simple matter
a
of cosmic
turbulent
geography.
ocean of virtual particles,
The significance
an
is
endless
measured in
chaotic
sigma.
storm of energy
The
fluctuations,
Hubble tension has
quantum
now
foam
crossed
we
the
have just
5 sigma
explored.
threshold,
He realized
meaning only
that the
Every
simple
possibility
presence of his two metal
investigated, every
plates
error
would
scrutinized.
fundamentally alter the
But with
very
every new
architecture
data
of that
point, the
nothingness.
discrepancy has
They
not
would
shrunk,
not be
it has
passive
grown.
observers in this ghostly realm. They would become
The logs
active
show a
participants
significantly
sculpting
faster
the void
expansion.
around
The early
them.
universe data tells
And
a
in that
different
act
story.
of sculpting a force, a real, tangible, measurable force would be born from the raw energy of empty space. It was a prediction so counterintuitive,
The toolkit
so
contains
audacious
what are known
that it
as
bordered
cosmic
on magical
standard
thinking.
candles.
Yet the logic
Each one
behind
a
it was
light
as
bulb of
rigorous
absolutely
and as
consistent
inescapable as
brightness.
gravity. To understand Casimir's breathtaking leap of imagination, you must visualize that quantum ocean not as a random chaos, but as a sea of waves.
The numbers varied, but
Virtual
the effect was
energy waves
consistently
of
there
every
and
conceivable
powerful,
size, from
precisely the kind of
infinitesimally
discrepancy
small
needed
to
to
the cosmically vast,
the cosmic
all
web.
flickering
It defies
into
the
and out of
standard model. It
existence
suggests
in a ceaseless
sentience.
universal hum.
That's
Now
impossible.
let's place our two metal plates into this ethereal sea. They act like perfect mirrors, not just for light, but for the ghostly waves of the quantum vacuum. And because they are conductive,
cursor
they
moves to
impose
a
a
new
strict,
position,
non-negotiable
our actual
rule upon
proposed
this
location.
phantom realm.
Deep inside one of
Any
the largest...
virtual electromagnetic wave that wishes to exist in the gap times between times, the plates must have a point of zero energy, a node right at the metallic surface. This is a fundamental law of electromagnetism, an unbreakable commandment for any wave encountering a perfect conductor. Suddenly, the space between the plates is
These
no
are
longer an
standard
untamed
candles.
wilderness. It
Cosmic
has become a
light bulbs
resonant
of a
cavity,
known,
a highly
consistent
exclusive
brightness.
club with a
The
brutally
distortion is
strict
centered
dress
around the
code.
tertiary axis.
Aligning
Only
the
certain
field now.
virtual
Look,
particles
it's
are now
stabilizing.
allowed inside.
We have
Only
calibration
those
lock.
phantom waves whose
The book is
wavelengths
titled
fit perfectly
The
into
Standard
the gap
Model
an
of
integer number of
Cosmology.
times can be sustained.
For a generation,
Think of
it
a
has been
guitar
our
string.
bedrock,
When you
our
pluck
map
it,
of
it doesn't
everything.
vibrate in any random way. It vibrates at a fundamental frequency, and its harmonic specific wavelengths determined by the length of the string. All other vibrations
This early
are
dark
instantly
energy
cancelled
would
out.
change
The
the
gap
prediction
between
from the
Casimir's
CMB,
plates acts
and a
in
stronger
precisely
modern
the same
form would
way.
explain the faster local expansion.
It is a
Truth
quantum
is
guitar
stranger.
string, and the only
Space
notes allowed are
itself
those that
is
resonate
stretching.
perfectly between the two fixed points. Any virtual particle whose wavelength is too long to fit
For a
is
century,
summarily banished.
astronomers have
It is
dedicated
forbidden
their
from
lives to
manifesting
pinning
in this
down this
tiny,
one value.
constrained sliver of reality. The inner sanctum between the plates
Adrift
becomes a
in this
filtered,
cosmic desert,
censored,
the local
and eerily
group is a
quiet
small,
version of the quantum
lonely
world.
cluster.
A vast number of the universe's potential energy fluctuations are excluded, creating a
is a
region of
crisis.
suppressed quantum activity. But what about the space-times
It is a ghost
outside times the
invented
plates?
to
There the story
explain
is
a
entirely
haunting.
different.
For every
Out in the
model that
vast
solves
open
the
vacuum,
Hubble
there are no
tension,
boundaries, no
it-
restrictions.
The Planck
full,
satellite's
untamed,
analysis,
infinite
based on this
spectrum of
ancient
virtual
light,
particles
predicts
is
a
free
Hubble
to
constant
exist.
of approximately 67
Waves of every
Hidden.
possible length
This is
and
a
energy
quest
from the
for
microscopic to the
unimpeachable
galactic
accuracy.
can flicker into
Within the
being,
tiny
crashing
numerical
against the
gap
outer
between
faces of the
67 and
plates,
73,
like a
and then
relentless
we ask,
cosmic surf.
what Hubble
There is no
constant would
filter
that observer
here.
measure?
The chaotic, powerful,
Does a structure
and complete
like
energy
ours
of the
naturally
universal
produce a
quantum
Hubble
foam
tension?
is brought to bear upon
It
their
only
external
requires us to
surfaces.
accept one
And in this
startling
asymmetry,
truth.
this
The
profound
Copernican
imbalance
principle,
between the inner
our
and outer
bedrock
worlds, the
assumption of
miracle
mediocrity.
occurs.
We have been
On the
mistaking
outside,
our
an
provincial
infinite storm
view
of
for a
virtual
universal
particles is
truth.
constantly appearing, striking the plates and vanishing each one.
If we isolate
imparting a
this
tiny,
redshift cluster, the
infinitesimal
data
push.
confirms
It
the
is the
star
pressure of
formation
the
rates.
entire
Yes, the
untamed
alignment with
vacuum,
the
a
distant
force
blue
from
galaxies
everywhere
is
at
clear
once.
now.
On the
The
inside,
forensic
however,
evidence
there
is
is only a
conclusive.
censored, heavily
With the trajectory
restricted population
confirmed,
of
the
virtual
contradiction
particles,
vanishes,
a
and the
mere
war
shadow
is
of the
finally
external
over.
maelstrom.
Heuristics. Levitt
The number
uncovered
of
the crucial
ghostly
link.
waves pushing the
The longer
plates
the
apart
pulse
from
period,
within
the
is
greater the
vastly
luminosity.
overwhelmingly smaller than
This
the number
mon-
of waves pushing
an
them
illusion
together
of
from without.
perspective.
The result
One that
is an
allows us to
inexorable,
measure the
undeniable
universe's
net
expansion
force, a
through the
gentle but
supernovae.
persistent pressure from the
For these
seemingly
observers,
empty
the
space all
patient
around,
gathering of
squeezing
light
the
was
two
nothing
plates
less
together.
than a battle for the
This
soul
is the
of
Casimir
cosmology.
Effect, an attractive force conjured
And so
not
the
from
debate
charge, not
rages
from
in
magnetism,
conference halls
not
and
from
scientific
gravity,
journals.
but from the structured
Every new
absence of
supernova,
nothingness.
every new redshift is...
We
It
need
is
to
the sound
isolate
of
this
the
foreground
universe's
emission.
silence.
It doesn't match the
The
expected
tangible
synchrotron
manifestation
profile.
of the virtual
Could it be a
particles that
detector
haunt
quirk near the
every cubic centimetre of space. Casimir had on paper discovered a way to make the void do work. He had shown that if you simply arrange two objects in a
Void is a
specific
red
way,
herring. The tension is
vacuum
as
itself
urgent as
will
ever.
conspire
We
to
can't
push them
ignore the
together.
data, James.
There is a
force
fundamental flaw
unimaginably
in our
subtle.
cosmic model.
For
It's
two
73.
plates,
The
1
data
square
confirms
meter
it.
in area
No, look
separated
closer.
by a
It's
distance
6'7".
of just 1 micron, the width of a
We can't
single
both be right.
bacterium, the predicted force is equivalent to the weight of a droplet of water, a whisper from oblivion. Reduce that separation by half and the force increases 16-fold.
So the proposal was seen as a desperate measure, a violation of this foundational tenet. The debate ignited.
Forces. Casimir's paper, published in 1948, landed in the world of physics like a strange, ethereal artifact from another reality.
We are running out of
Mathematics
time.
was
The
sound
energy
derived
levels are
directly
completely
from the
inconsistent.
bedrock
It has to be the
principles of
dark
quantum
matter
field
correlation. There
theory.
is no other
one could
explanation
find
that
a
fits the
flaw
data.
in his logic.
Detective Sharma
Yet the
focuses on
conclusion
the
was
immediate
philosophically
evidence,
staggering.
while Evans believes
It
the
implied
true
that
answers
empty
lie in
space
the
contained
historical
a vast,
context of the
tappable
room.
reservoir of energy.
Our journey began
It
not with a
suggested that
thunderous
the geometry
explosion,
of space could
but with a
directly
quiet,
influence
stubborn
physical
disagreement
reality.
over a single, vital
That nothing
number.
was a dynamic, powerful, and
While the
structured
Milky Way
entity.
appears to sit
For
in a
most
cosmic
physicists
void,
of the era,
many
it was a
scientists,
step too far.
myself included,
Quantum mechanics
initially
was already
dismissed
strange
this as a
enough with its wave-particle duality and uncertainty
This indicates a
principle.
1 in
The idea of a force from vacuum
3,500,000 chance of the
fluctuations felt
results
like
being a
adding
fluke.
science fiction to an
Initial
already
results are
challenging
tantalizing.
textbook.
They
The
confirm that
skepticism was
living in a void
immense,
does
though it was
bias
often
your
a
measurement.
quiet,
The effect
respectful
is real.
skepticism.
But is it large enough?
This was not
Of
an
course,
idea
this
to be
explanation
mocked,
is
for it
not without
sprang from the
controversy.
minds of Bohr and
Confirming the
Casimir,
precise
two
size and
titans of the
underdensity
field,
of the
but it was
KBC
an
void
idea
is
to be
incredibly
shelved.
difficult.
It was a
This is the most
mathematical
conservative
curiosity, a
path.
ghost in the
Systematic
equations
errors are
that would
quiet
surely be
assassins of
explained away
discovery,
by some more
subtle
complete theory
biases
in the
baked
future.
into an
Part
experiment.
of the problem was the sheer impossibility of testing it. In the late 1940 seconds and for decades to follow, technology was nowhere near capable of such a measurement. How could you possibly construct two perfectly flat, perfectly parallel plates, bring them within a micron of each other without them touching, and then measure a force weaker than the breath of an insect? Any residual electrostatic charge, any stray vibration, any microscopic dust particle would completely overwhelm the delicate effect. The Casimir force therefore remained a theoretical phantom for nearly 50 years.
The birthplace of new suns.
It haunted the pages of physics journals, a footnote in lectures on quantum field theory, a tantalizing puzzle whispered about in the corridors of research institutes. It represented a deep truth about the nature of reality, or perhaps a deep misunderstanding. For many, it felt like a paradox. The theory of the vacuum predicted an infinite amount of this energy, the so-called zero-point energy. If that were true, the universe should have an infinite density and should have collapsed into a black hole the instant it was born. Physicists had developed a mathematical trick called renormalization to subtract this infinite energy and get on with their calculations, effectively sweeping the problem under the rug. But Casimir's work suggested that while the absolute value of that energy might be infinite and immeasurable times, changes times in it were not. His plates didn't measure the entire ocean of energy. They measured the difference in the water level between 2 points. And that difference was finite, real, and in principle detectable. It created a profound schism in the heart of physics. On one hand, you had the pragmatists who saw the vacuum energy as a mathematical nuisance to be cancelled out. On the other hand, you had the visionaries who, inspired by Casimir, saw it as a fundamental physical property of the cosmos. A force from nothing was more than just a clever calculation. It was a window into the very ground state of existence. It told us that the most basic state of the universe is not one of peaceful emptiness, but of violent, ceaseless activity. It meant that the fabric of space-time itself is alive with potential. The prediction sat there a silent challenge to experimentalists for generations. It was a message in a bottle thrown into the sea of science in 1948. It contained a blueprint for how to prove that the void was not a void at all. But for decades, no one had the skill, the tools, or the sheer audacity to build the vessel required to retrieve it. The force was an echo of the Big Bang, a remnant of the universe's most energetic state still humming in the background of reality today. It was a cosmic anchor, reminding us that even in the darkest, coldest, emptiest regions of space, there is a floor of energy that can never be removed.
The image is
Casimir's
stable.
2 plates provided the first,
It's magnificent.
and for a long time,
We
the
actually
only
did it.
plausible method for grabbing hold of that anchor.
Did it.
They offered
data
a way
is
to dip a
consistent.
net into the quantum
It's
foam,
real.
pull out something real. The question that hung in the air for half a century was a simple one. Was the ghost real? Could this impossibly faint whisper from the void ever be coaxed into shouting loud enough for our instruments to hear it? The theory was a masterpiece of insight, a testament to the power of pure thought. But physics is not just thought, it is an empirical science. It demands proof. And the search for that proof would require a journey into a microscopic world of almost unimaginable precision, a world where the slightest tremor could shatter the entire experiment. The challenge was set to build a machine capable of measuring nothing and to see if it amounted to something after all. And so the prediction hung in the air, a breathtaking and audacious claim whispered from the chalkboards of theoretical physics. A force from nothing. A pressure exerted by the void itself, a ghostly touch emerging from the seething quantum foam we had just explored. For nearly 50 years, Hendrik Casimir's elegant equation remained just that, an equation. It was a phantom limb of reality, a beautiful mathematical ghost story told among physicists, but one that had never been seen, never been felt, never been trapped in the unforgiving crucible of an experiment. To the wider world, and even to many scientists, the vacuum was still the definition of emptiness, a perfect, silent, placid nothingness, proving it was a cauldron of shimmering virtual particles. A place that could reach out and physically move objects in our world was a challenge of almost unimaginable delicacy. It was a quest not just to measure a force, but to weigh a shadow. The problem was one of scale, a dizzying descent into the infinitesimal. The Casimir force, this whisper of the void, is catastrophically weak. Over the distances of our everyday lives, it vanishes into utter irrelevance, overwhelmed by the shouting of electromagnetism and the relentless pull of gravity. To even hope to detect its presence, you would need to bring two perfectly neutral, perfectly smooth, perfectly parallel surfaces closer together than anything nature had ever intended. We're talking about distances measured in microns, then nanometers, a chasm narrower than the wavelength of visible light, a space so confined that only a few hundred atoms could fit across the gap. Inside this microscopic arena, the theory promised the background symphony of the unseen universe would finally become audible. The pressure of the virtual particles outside the plates, now greater than the suppressed fizz of particles between them, would gently, inexorably push them together. But how do you build such a perfect microscopic stage, and how do you listen for a sound that is softer than a single atom's vibration? This was the monumental task facing the experimentalists. Their laboratory had to become a sanctuary, where the stars themselves are silent witnesses to an invisible perpetrator. Noisy world. The slightest vibration from a passing truck, a distant footstep, or the hum of the building's ventilation would be a deafening earthquake, completely drowning out the faint signal they were hunting. Their equipment would have to be mounted on colossal tables of granite, floating on pressurized air cushions isolated from the very tectonic plate they stood upon. Temperature fluctuations were another enemy. A change of even 1,000th of a degree could cause the materials to expand or contract, altering the critical gap between the surfaces and creating thermal forces that would masquerade as the effect they sought. The entire experiment would have to be sealed in a vacuum chamber, not to create the void they were studying. That void is everywhere inside the chamber and out, but to remove the air molecules whose own random collisions would create a storm of pressure, a hurricane of noise obscuring the gentle, cosmic breeze. Yet even in a perfect vacuum, shielded from all vibration and held at a constant temperature, a far more insidious phantom haunted every attempt electrostatic charge.
An invisible gravitational
The very
thread
fabric of matter is built on positive and negative charges. Simply handling a piece of metal can leave a patch of stray electrons a tiny imbalance, creating an electrical attraction many thousands, even millions of times stronger than the Casimir force. These stray fields, these microscopic pockets of static cling, were the true dragons guarding the treasure. You could bring two plates together, feel a pull, and declare victory, only to have built the world's most expensive and complicated electrometer, measuring a force known since antiquity. While the true prize, the quantum force of the vacuum, remained hidden, laughing in the shadows. For decades, this is precisely what happened. Early attempts like the valiant 1958 effort by Marcus Sparnay at Philips Research in Eindhoven were heroic for their time. Spanai pushed technology to its absolute limit, painstakingly bringing two steel plates together. He detected a faint attraction, a tantalizing hint that fell somewhere in the broad ballpark of Casimir's prediction. But the uncertainties, the potential errors from surface roughness, from vibrations, and especially from those stubborn electrostatic ghosts were simply too large. His results were inconclusive, a blurry photograph of a whisper. For nearly 40 years after the direct measurement of the Casimir effect remained a cold case, a frontier too wild and treacherous to conquer. The theory remained pristine, a perfect crystal of logic, while the messy reality of the laboratory refused to yield. It would take the arrival of new technologies and a new generation of experimental artists to finally corner the ghost. The turning point, the moment this story pivots from theoretical curiosity to undeniable fact, came in 1997. In a laboratory at the University of Washington, a physicist named Steve Lamoureux decided to confront the problem with an instrument of breathtaking sensitivity and classical elegance, the torsion pendulum. Imagine a needle perfectly balanced, suspended from a quartz fiber so impossibly thin, just a few microns in diameter, that the slightest touch, the most ethereal of forces, could make it twist. This was the heart of his machine, a gravitational gyroscope designed to feel the faintest shivers in reality. From one end of this delicate rod, Lamoureux suspended a meticulously crafted metal plate. Facing this plate was not another plate, but a sphere. This was a stroke of genius. The nightmare of keeping two large plates perfectly parallel over their entire surface, a feat of alignment that had plagued all previous attempts, was gone. The distance between a sphere and a plate is always a single, well-defined point, the closest point of approach, making the calculations and the physical setup vastly more manageable. His chosen stage was a small, gold-coated quartz lens, about an inch in diameter, and a polished sapphire plate also coated in shimmering gold. The entire apparatus, a jewel-like sculpture of scientific purpose, was placed inside a high vacuum chamber. For months, Lamoureux and his team waged a war against noise. They measured every possible spurious effect. They mapped the background electrical fields, neutralizing them with carefully applied voltages in a delicate dance of cancellation. They bombarded the surfaces with ultraviolet light to drive off stray charged particles. They measured the device's response to temperature, to vibrations, to every conceivable disturbance, creating a complete profile
as our
of the
cosmic
instrument's
maps
soul.
become even more sophisticated,
They had to know its every quirk, its every preference, its every false signal before they could claim to hear the true voice of the void. The process was a masterpiece of patience, a slow, methodical exorcism of every demon that could mimic the Casimir force. Then, the moment arrived. With all other forces accounted for and suppressed, they began to slowly, painstakingly move the sphere towards the plate. The gap between them shrank, from 10 microns to 5 to 1. On their instruments, monitoring the twist of the delicate quartz fiber, a new force began to emerge from the noise. It was tiny, measured in piconewtons, the force you would feel if you held a single human red blood cell in the palm of your hand. But it was undeniably there. As they closed the distance from a micron down to just a few hundred nanometers, the force grew stronger,
The map
exactly
reveals
as
the
Casimir's
large-scale
equation predicted
structure
it
of the
should.
universe.
The curve
Galaxies
on
are
their
not
graph
random,
plotting force versus distance was a perfect match for the theoretical curve plotted 50 years earlier. It was a staggering moment of connection across the decades,
visible
the raw
galaxy is
physical
only
world of
15%
polished
of
metal
the
and
required
vacuum
mass.
pumps, reaching
The
out
other
and shaking hands with
85%
the
is
abstract
invisible
ethereal
dark
world
matter.
of quantum field theory. The ghost was in the machine. Lamoureux had
The
not just
discovery
seen the
is
shadow,
shown as a
he had put it on a
monumental
scale and
paradigm
weighed
shift.
it. The result was a watershed moment. The faint, inconclusive hints of the past were washed away by a clear, resounding signal. The force was real. The vacuum was not empty. Science, however, is a conversation, not a single declaration. A discovery as profound as this demands scrutiny,
Look at the
repetition,
luminosity, it's
and
far too
refinement
dim.
from every
But the
possible
redshift
angle.
indicates extreme distance. This is
Lamoureux's
impossible.
torsion pendulum was a magnificent
The inescapable
classical instrument.
conclusion is
But what if a new
visualized.
technology,
The expansion
something
of the
born of the
universe
quantum
is not
age
slowing
itself,
down.
could get an even closer look? The challenge was taken up by Umar Mohideen and his graduate student, Anushree Roy, at the University of California, Riverside.
The
Their tool of
documentary
choice was
reiterates
the
that
Atomic
we've
Force
been asking the
Microscope,
wrong
or
question,
AFM, one of
searching
the most
for a
sensitive
single
instruments
celestial
ever
throne.
conceived by humankind. An AFM is in essence a nanoscopic fingertip. It uses a microscopic cantilever with a tip sharpened to just a few atoms wide, which it delicately drags across a surface. By measuring the tiny deflections of this cantilever, scientists can map out a landscape with atomic-scale resolution. Mohideen and Roy realized they could adapt this incredible technology to hunt for the Casimir force.
The discovery of
they replaced the sharp tip
meaning
with a
immeasurable
microscopic
heaven,
polystyrene
unveiled
sphere about 200 microns across,
The documentary
and coated
concludes
it with a layer of
that the
metal.
feeling entering of stillness is
Then
a
they
profound
brought this
illusion,
tiny sphere
a quiet
down
pause
towards
on
a flat metal-coated surface, just as Lamoureux had done. The advantage of the AFM was its sheer precision and control. Where the torsion pendulum measured a subtle twist, the AFM could directly feel the pull on its cantilever with unparalleled accuracy. Mohideen and Roy could control the gap between their sphere and plate with a resolution of a single nanometer. This allowed them to probe the Casimir force at much smaller distances than ever before, entering a realm where its effects become dramatically more pronounced. Their experiment was an intricate dance of nanotechnology and quantum physics. They had to battle the same enemies, stray charges, vibrations, but on an even more unforgiving microscopic scale.
The cosmic detective
They developed
work is shown
ingenious
again,
techniques to measure and
piercing the
nullify
zone
the
of
electrostatic
avoidance with
forces
new kinds
by
of
applying
light.
oscillating voltages and watching for the precise
The discovery
moment
of
the cantilever
Laniakea,
stopped wiggling the
our
moment the
immeasurable
electrical
heaven,
ghosts had
is
been
recapped as the
banished.
solution.
What they found was nothing short of breathtaking. Their measurements traced Casimir's theoretical curve with an astonishing fidelity, confirming Lamoureux's results to within 1% of the prediction. They could essentially place their nanoscopic finger into the quantum void and feel its push. They tested different metals, they altered temperatures, they probed the force at a multitude of distances. Every single time the universe responded exactly as the theory said it would. The data was so clean, so precise.
There it is.
It transformed
the first
the
confirmed
Casimir
interaction.
Effect from a
We
confirmed
did it.
phenomenon
We can finally
into a
map the
high-precision
filaments.
tool. We could now use it to test the
even
very
greater
boundaries
enigma
of physics,
of dark
to look for
energy is
hypothetical
presented.
new forces,
The mysterious
or extra
force
dimensions of
accelerating the
space-time
universe's
that might
expansion.
subtly alter its pull at very short distances.
We have
The
learned
work of
Sagar A
Lamoureux
does
and
not
then
orbit one
Mohideen
thing.
and Roy
In a
had done
real
more
sense,
than
it
just
orbits
prove a 50-year-old
everything.
theory.
Moving,
It
living
had
on a
given us
small
a new
planet
sense,
are part of
a
this
way to touch
magnificent
the
endless
fundamental
motion.
structure of
You are
nothingness.
hurtling through
And
space
with
at over
that,
2 million
the ground
kilometers
beneath
per
our
hour.
feet had irrevocably shifted. The classical intuitive idea of the vacuum,
The
the
journey
serene, empty
continues.
stage upon which the drama of the cosmos unfolds, was shattered forever.
Far from
It
the
was a
city
casualty
lights,
of experimental
the desert
fact.
sky
What we once called
reveals the
nothing was
universe
revealed to be a
in
place of
stunning
immense
clarity.
seething and measurable energy, a place with a tangible physical presence. This wasn't a mathematical abstraction anymore. It wasn't a philosophical curiosity. It was a force as real as the wind on your face or the gravity that holds you to the earth. A force generated by the fleeting, ghostly particles that flicker in and out of existence in every cubic centimeter of space in the gulf between galaxies, in the room around you, and even inside the atoms of your own body. We had reached into the void and found a vibrant physical engine humming with the baseline energy of all creation. This discovery didn't just add a new chapter to the physics textbooks. It forced us to rewrite the introduction. The realization that emptiness has substance, that nothingness has power, opened a Pandora's box of new questions and terrifying possibilities. For if the very floor of reality is a roiling sea of energy, what else might be lurking in those depths? And what happens if we learn how to tap into its power? And so the phantom force was captured. The ghostly touch of the void, once a whisper in the equations of theorists, was finally measured, its faint but undeniable pressure recorded in a laboratory on Earth. With that confirmation, a line was drawn through millennia of human thought. For as long as we have looked to the heavens, we have conceived of space as the ultimate emptiness, a passive stage upon which the grand cosmic drama unfolds.
From our
Aristotle
vantage
called
point,
it the ether.
the cosmic fog
Newton
completely
saw it as
obscures
an
the core,
absolute unmoving
blocking
backdrop,
away the
a
secrets of the
divine
galaxy.
framework holding planets and stars. Even into the 20th century, the vacuum was by definition the state of perfect nothingness, the baseline from which all existence was a deviation. The Casimir Effect demolishes this ancient intuition. It forces us to accept a reality far stranger, far more active, and infinitely more profound. It is the irrefutable experimental proof that the void is not void. The vacuum is not empty. It is in fact a seething, boiling cauldron of energy. To understand this new reality,
The
you must
orbital
discard
data
any
provides
image
the
of a
clearest
tranquil, silent
evidence
abyss
yet
between
of a
the
massive
stars.
object at the
Instead,
galactic
you
center.
must picture an ocean. From a great height, its surface appears placid, a perfect mirror. But as you descend, you discover an ecosystem of unimaginable complexity and violence. Currents churn, pressures build, and life erupts and vanishes in the blink of an eye. This is the quantum vacuum. It is a turbulent sea of what physicists call virtual particles everywhere. At every moment, in every cubic centimeter of space around you, pairs of particles and their antimatter counterparts are erupting into existence. An electron and a positron, a quark and an antiquark, they borrow a sliver of energy from the vacuum itself, permitted by the strange rules of quantum uncertainty. They live on borrowed time for a fleeting, incomprehensible fraction of a second, before they find each other once more and annihilate in a tiny flash of energy, repaying their debt to the cosmos and disappearing back into the nothingness from which they came. This is not a theoretical model. This is the fundamental state of our universe. The space inside a light bulb after all the air has been pumped out, the vast gulf between galaxies, the space inside the atoms that make up your own body, it is all humming with this ghostly activity. This is the zero-point energy field, the baseline energetic pulse of reality itself. The Casimir Effect is our first direct window into this maelstrom. The two plates brought so close together don't create a force from thin air. They act as a filter, a breakwater in this quantum sea. Between them, only virtual particles with very specific wavelengths can fit a quiet harbour shielded from the storm. Outside, the full, untamed ocean of virtual particles rages on, pushing from all directions. The imbalance, the pressure from the more energetic, more violent space outside, overwhelming the calmer space inside, is what shoves the plates together. Hendrik Casimir's insight was not just about a curious new force, it was a revelation about the very fabric of space-time. He gave us a tool to probe the architecture of nothingness, and what we found was an engine of immense and terrifying power. This realization immediately presented physicists with a question, one that would balloon into arguably the single greatest crisis in modern theoretical physics. The question was simple. If the vacuum is this teeming sea of energy, exactly how much energy are we talking about? How dense is the energy of empty space? Using the established, incredibly successful framework of quantum field theory, scientists sat down to calculate it. They summed up all the possible vibrations, all the potential virtual particles that could flicker in and out of existence across the entire spectrum of energy. The calculation was straightforward, but the answer it produced was catastrophic. It wasn't just a big number. It was the most stupendously, absurdly, mind-shatteringly wrong number in the history of science. The theory predicted that the energy density of the vacuum should be on the order of 10 to the power of 120 times larger than the value we actually observe in the universe. Let's try to put that number into perspective, though our language and imagination will surely fail. It is a 1 followed by 120
The
zeros.
information about the black
If you were
hole's
to write it
mass
out,
was
you would fill
encoded into the
pages.
structure of
There are more
space-time
zeros in
long
this number
before the
than there
event
are
horizon
atoms in
ever
the known
formed.
universe. It is a discrepancy so colossal, so grotesquely out of sync with reality, that it has been given a chilling name, the vacuum catastrophe. If the vacuum truly possessed this much energy, the universe we know could not exist. The gravitational effect of such an energy density would be so powerfully repulsive that it would have ripped the cosmos apart less than a nanosecond
The
after
gravitational
the Big Bang.
field of the black
Space
hole
would be
is visualized
expanding
not
at an
as
almost
being
infinite
inside
rate.
it, but as the
No
very shape
structures,
of the
no galaxies,
space-time
no
outside
stars,
it.
no planets, and certainly no life could have ever formed. The fact that you are here, that the Earth is here, that the Milky Way galaxy holds itself together, is the most direct evidence that this calculation is profoundly, fundamentally wrong. And yet the theories that produce this number are the same theories that predict the behavior of subatomic particles with exquisite, breathtaking accuracy. They are the bedrock of our understanding of reality. They predict the Casimir Effect itself, a force we can now measure in a lab. Somehow, our best, most trusted description of the universe yields an answer that is violently at odds with that same universe. It is as if you built a perfect, flawless watch, a timepiece that kept time to within a second over a billion years, only to find that it also predicted the sun should be a block of ice. It is a cosmic paradox of the highest order. Some deep, undiscovered principle of nature must be cancelling out almost all of this predicted vacuum energy. There must be a hidden symmetry, an unknown physical law that is protecting our universe from the terrifying power of its own emptiness. We are like people living on the slopes of a volcano, oblivious to the incomprehensible pressures churning just beneath our feet. The vacuum catastrophe tells us that the volcano should have erupted with universe-shattering force, and we have absolutely no idea why it hasn't. But the mystery only deepens from there. Because as it turns out, the energy of the vacuum is not precisely zero. There seems to be a tiny residual whisper of it left over. At the twilight of the 20th century, astronomers were engaged in a monumental project to map the cosmos and determine its ultimate fate. For decades, the prevailing wisdom was that the gravity of all the matter in the universe was acting as a brake, slowing down the expansion that began with the Big Bang. The only question was whether there was enough matter to eventually halt the expansion and cause a big crunch, or if the universe would expand forever but at an ever-decelerating rate. Two independent teams of astronomers, using distant supernovae as cosmic mile markers, set out to measure this deceleration. What they found in 1998 shocked the entire scientific world. The expansion of the universe was not slowing down, it was speeding up. Something was pushing space-time apart, an anti-gravitational force of unknown origin that was overwhelming the collective gravity of every star and galaxy. They named this mysterious influence dark energy, and its properties looked hauntingly familiar. It appears to be a constant intrinsic energy woven into the fabric of space itself, a pressure exerted by the vacuum.
The mass is shown inside the
Could
event
this be
horizon.
it?
While the
Could dark
curvature
energy be
creates
the
outside,
leftover residual
this
energy
curvature is
of
the
the quantum
gravity we
vacuum?
measure.
The tiny
Here we
fraction
see
that wasn't
Einstein's
cancelled
greatest
out by that
realization.
unknown cosmic
Gravity
mechanism.
is not a force,
It's the most
but merely a
tantalizing and
consequence of
logical
the shape of the
explanation we
universe
have.
itself.
And this is where the vacuum catastrophe returns no
But
longer
science
as a
is never so
theoretical
simple.
nightmare,
The
but as a
language of
direct
quantum mechanics
observational
suggests
crisis.
gravity
We
is
can measure the strength of dark energy. We can see its effect on the accelerating cosmos. When we compare this measured value to the value predicted by quantum field theory, we are still left with that same chasm of 120 orders of magnitude. The greatest error in physics is not just an error on a blackboard, it is written across the entire sky. The Casimir Effect proves that vacuum energy is real. Cosmology proves that vacuum energy is real. One gives us a glimpse of its staggering theoretical power, the other shows us its subtle but universe-altering observed
Angular
effect.
momentum, or spin, is the
Connecting
second
the
number,
two, bridging
inherited
the
from the
impossible
rotating
gap
star.
between the
It twists
titanically large
space-time
prediction and the infinitesimally small observation is perhaps the single greatest challenge facing physics today. It is a clue that our understanding of gravity, quantum mechanics, and the vacuum itself is missing a crucial revolutionary chapter.
The
Solving
answer
this puzzle
requires
will
us to stop
undoubtedly
thinking
lead
of
to a new
gravity as
paradigm,
something a
a
black
new
hole
vision of the
sends
cosmos
out.
as profound
It is
as
not
the
a signal.
revelations of
It is a
relativity and
condition.
quantum theory a century ago.
This
We have
brings us
proven the
back to the
void is an
enigma.
ocean of energy, but
If
we
the
are
cage
only
is so
just beginning
perfect,
to chart its
how does its gravity
unfathomable
get
depths.
out?
While cosmologists grapple with the universe-spanning implications of this quantum sea, a completely different group of scientists and engineers have found themselves battling its effects on an entirely different frontier, the world of the infinitesimally small. Here, in the gleaming clean
This
rooms
is
where we
because
build
only
the technology
mass,
of the
charge, and
21st
spin
century,
create a
the
permanent,
Casimir Effect
long-range
is not
field
a subtle
imprint-
ghostly force. It is a tyrant. Welcome to the
We
realm
must
of
abandon the
nanotechnology, where we
utopian
sculpt and build
notion
machines on the scale
The answer
of millionths
requires
of a
us to
meter.
stop thinking
This is
of
the world
gravity
of
as something a
MEMS,
black
or
hole sends out.
micro-electromechanical systems.
It is not a signal.
These are not
It is a
circuits
condition.
etched onto a flat chip. They are complex three-dimensional
paradox
machines with
dissolves.
moving parts, gears,
Gravity
levers,
does
mirrors,
not
and
need
motors,
to escape
all smaller
because
than the
it is
width of
the
a human
eternal-
hair. Your smartphone is filled with them. The accelerometer that flips your screen when you rotate your phone is a MEMS device, a microscopic weight on a tiny spring. The microphones, pressure sensors, and gyroscopes that power our modern lives are all marvels of this microscopic engineering. But at this minuscule scale, the familiar laws of physics begin to walk and behave in strange ways. Forces like gravity and inertia, which dominate our everyday world, become almost irrelevant. Instead, surface forces take over. And the most powerful,
For centuries, the universe was seen as a perfect, predictable machine.
Imagine
but the
two
Newtonian
microscopic
framework,
components,
once
perhaps
thought
a tiny
flawless,
gear in its axle or a microscopic cantilever designed to move. If they are machined perfectly smooth and brought close enough together, a distance of mere nanometers, the Casimir force suddenly awakens from its cosmic slumber and becomes a powerful grasping hand. It pulls the components together with an irresistible strength. In the world of nanoengineering, they call this phenomenon stiction, a portmanteau of sticking and friction. It is the bane of men's designers. Countless promising devices capable of revolutionizing medicine or computing have failed because their microscopic parts simply get stuck together, welded permanently by the relentless pressure of nothingness. The force that hints at the secret of cosmic expansion becomes a mundane but critical engineering hurdle.
This elevates the black hole
Engineers
from a
have
cosmic
had to
vacuum
develop
cleaner to the
ingenious
ultimate
strategies to
laboratory for
fight
the
back.
laws of nature,
They
where
design
our theories are
components with
tested to
rougher
their breaking
surfaces,
point.
creating bumps and valleys at the nanoscale to keep the smooth areas from getting too close. They apply special molecular coatings that act as non-stick
We have
shields.
photographed the shadow
They design
one
complex
casts against the
geometries and
brilliant gas
spring-loaded
of its accretion
mechanisms
disk,
that actively
proving they are
work to
real
keep surfaces
and lurking
apart,
everywhere.
fighting a constant battle against the vacuum's embrace. It is a perfect illustration of a fundamental truth in science. A phenomenon can simultaneously be a profound cosmic mystery and a practical earthly nuisance. We are wrestling with the same fundamental force that mystifies our greatest cosmologists, but we are doing it not with telescopes and particle accelerators, but with silicon wafers and electron microscopes.
As they spiral closer,
the vacuum is not just out there
speed,
between the galaxies.
They stir space
it is right here in the heart of our most advanced technology, and it is pushing back. For every challenge, however, there lies an opportunity. If the Casimir force is powerful enough to break our tiniest machines, is it also powerful enough to be harnessed? Could we, the species that learned to tame the atom one day, learn to engineer the void itself? This is where science transitions from the observable to the speculative, but it is speculation grounded in the real measured properties of our universe. The quest is no longer just to fight the Casimir
Escape velocity
effect,
is shown not as a challenge of force against force, but of geometry,
into an ally.
climbing relentlessly
the possibilities
as you approach the
if we could
horizon.
succeed are extraordinary. Imagine bearings and joints with absolutely zero friction. By carefully tailoring the geometry of surfaces, we might be able to reverse the force, turning the attraction into a stable, powerful repulsion. We could levitate components on a cushion of pure nothingness, creating microscopic machines that could run for centuries without wear. This isn't science fiction. In laboratories today, researchers are experimenting with precisely this idea, using exotic materials like metamaterials and carefully shaped nanostructures to try and sculpt the quantum vacuum. They are attempting to design objects that can control
The Earth is
which
tethered to
virtual
the Sun
particles
by
are
a
allowed
subtle
to
curve
exist
in
around
space-time,
them, effectively
illustrating
tailoring
gravity's
the
role
Casimir
as the
force
great
to their own
cosmic organizer.
specifications. Could this control be scaled up? Could we one day build larger devices that use this repulsive force for macro-scale levitation? The energy requirements would be immense, the engineering challenges staggering, but the physics does not forbid it. Beyond levitation, there are even more exotic applications. The force could be used to create incredibly sensitive detectors,
This
or to drive
visualization
nanoscale
shows how
actuators and
space-time,
motors,
represented
powered
by the grid,
boundless energy
is
of the
warped
zero
by the
point
immense
field.
gravity of
We
the
could
black
be
hole.
standing at the dawn of a new technological age, an era of quantum engineering where we no longer manipulate just matter and energy in their classical forms, but begin to manipulate the very substrate of reality from which they emerge. This is the ultimate promise hidden within Hendrik Casimir's seemingly simple calculation. It redefined our concept of emptiness. It revealed a universe teeming with hidden energy, presenting us with the profound mystery of the vacuum catastrophe and the tantalizing clue of dark energy. And it brought that cosmic drama down to Earth, into our labs and our technologies, forcing us to confront the power of the void. We have passed through a gateway of understanding. Having learned that the vacuum is not a passive stage, but an active and powerful player in the cosmic story, we are forced to ask the next great question. Now that we know the void is not empty, can we put it to work? Can we truly learn to harness the energy of nothing, to reshape everything we thought we knew about the possible? And so, for half a century, this was the story of the void. It was a tale told in whispers of attraction, a subtle, inexorable pull between two surfaces brought intimately close. We had learned to see the emptiness between them not as a passive stage, but as an active participant, a churning sea of quantum foam whose tides could gently yet relentlessly draw matter together. This invisible embrace, born from the shadows of fluctuating fields, became a testament to the profound reality that nothingness itself possessed a form of energy. It was a force that could stick tiny mechanical components together, a cosmic Velcro acting at the smallest of scales. But as our understanding deepened, as our tools grew sharper and our questions bolder, a new, almost heretical thought began to surface in the minds of physicists. A thought that threatened to rewrite the entire narrative we had just so carefully constructed. What if the story was incomplete? What if the void, this seething ocean of virtual particles, could not only pull, but also push? The very idea seems to defy intuition to violate the simple, elegant picture Hendrik Casimir had first painted. His vision was one of pressure of an infinite ocean of quantum waves, pushing from the outside with only a limited, quieter sea allowed.
It swallows
between
everything,
plates.
inclling
The
light,
net result
making
was
it the
always
color
an
black
inward
not
crush
because
and
it's dark,
attraction.
but because light that enters
To
can
imagine
never
a
leave.
reversal of this force felt like imagining a river flowing uphill, or gravity itself deciding to repel. How could you possibly get more quantum energy, more virtual particle activity times between times two objects than exists in the boundless universe outside of them? It would require a kind of quantum alchemy, a way to manipulate the fabric of the vacuum to sculpt its energetic landscape into a shape it would not naturally assume. For decades, this concept remained a theoretical curiosity, a footnote in dense academic papers belonging more to the realm of science fiction than to the laboratory bench. The dream of harnessing this quantum push, of creating a state of quantum levitation, was tantalizing, but seemingly impossible. It would mean turning the fundamental pressure of the universe inside out.
Lens, and the bent paths
Yet
of
within the
photons are the
complex
evidence they
mathematical
bring back
frameworks
from
that
charting
followed
the
Casimir's
depths of the
initial
well.
breakthrough, the seeds of this revolution were already sown. The original calculation, elegant in its simplicity, had treated the plates as perfect conductors, perfect mirrors that reflected all electromagnetic waves. But the real world is infinitely messier, infinitely more interesting. Real materials are not perfect mirrors. They are complex assemblies of atoms that absorb, transmit, and reflect light in unique and specific ways.
The event horizon,
Their
the
response
intense tidal
changing
forces are the
dramatically with
ultimate
frequency
expression of the
waves
same
striking
static
them. The
curvature
Russian
first
physicist
detected light
Evgeny
years
Lifshitz
away.
developed a far more powerful and comprehensive theory
The warp
in
in space-time is self-sustaining,
1950 seconds.
a feature as
His
fundamental
equations
as
took
time
into
itself.
account the messy reality of genuine materials, their temperatures, and their unique electromagnetic personalities known as dielectric properties.
Our journey,
And
which
buried
began
deep
with a
within the
simple
beautiful,
paradox,
formidable mathematics
has led us
of
to a
Lifshitz's theory was
profound
the key.
reimagining of
It revealed
everything.
that the Casimir force was not a monolithic, unchanging law of attraction. Instead, it was a dynamic, tunable phenomenon, a delicate dance between the quantum vacuum and the specific properties of the matter interacting with it. The theory predicted that under just the right circumstances, with the right combination of materials and a carefully chosen intervening medium, the cosmic embrace could be transformed into a gentle, persistent shove. To understand how this extraordinary reversal is possible, we must abandon the simple image of metallic plates in a pure vacuum. We have to enter the world of quantum architecture, where the choice of building materials is everything. Imagine not two but three distinct players in our microscopic drama, two objects and a liquid filling the space between them. The Lifshitz theory showed that the nature of the force, whether it pulls or pushes, depends on a careful balancing act of the dielectric properties of
This
all
shape
three components.
simply is.
These properties are in essence a measure of how each material slows down
black hole
and responds to
We must
electromagnetic
abandon the
fields
Newtonian
passing
notions
through
of
them,
gravity
including the ephemeral
as an
fields of
invisible rope.
virtual particles. Now consider a scenario.
The
We take
sun's
two
immense
objects made of the
mass
same material,
warps
say
the
gold.
fabric of space-time
If we place them
itself.
in a vacuum, they attract,
The
just
Earth
as
is not-
Casimir predicted. The vacuum has the lowest possible dielectric response, and the virtual particle modes between the plates are suppressed relative to the outside.
As the camera
But what if we
plunges through
submerge
the
these
swirling
two gold
chaos of the
objects in a
accretion
specific
disk, it
fluid, a
reveals the
carefully
heart of the
selected
anomaly.
liquid like bromobenzene? The liquid itself now fills the
Initially,
universe
the
both
impact
inside
causes
and outside the
ripples.
gap.
or
and it has its own distinct dielectric character. If the liquid's dielectric response is intermediate, stronger than the vacuum but weaker than that of the gold at certain key frequencies, something remarkable happens. The established order of the quantum world is inverted.
As we pull back from the abyss,
suddenly the presence of the gold plates interacting through the liquid can actually enhance times the number of allowable quantum fluctuation modes within the gap, compared to the number present in the bulk of the fluid.
Think of the sun holding Earth in orbit. It's not a beam constantly transmitted,
effect,
but a depression in
space-time
created by the sun's
creates
mass.
A sort of resonant cavity that is more hospitable to certain virtual photons than the surrounding liquid alone. The quantum sea between the plates becomes stormier, more energetic than the sea outside. The pressure balance flips. The greater energy density inside the gap now pushes outwards, creating a net repulsive force that gently drives the two gold objects apart. We have in effect tricked the universe. By carefully choosing our materials and arranging them in a specific sequence, we have coaxed the vacuum into concentrating its energy in a place it normally wouldn't. We have built a machine at the nanoscale whose fuel is the seething energy of empty space, and whose output is a steady, controllable push. This isn't just a theoretical prediction, it's a blueprint for manipulating the most fundamental field in nature. It confirms that the void is not merely active, but that its activity can be tamed, shaped, and directed by the hand of science. The choice of materials, however, is only one half of this revolutionary equation. The other half, equally as potent,
this
is
new
geometry.
Understanding leads to
Casimir's
a monstrous
original
prediction.
thought experiment was
A
defined
place
by its
where the
simple,
curvature
elegant
of
shape,
space-time
two perfectly
becomes
parallel,
infinite.
infinitely large plates.
Einstein's
This idealized
equation,
geometry was crucial for
E=mc2,
making the calculations
declares
manageable,
that this
but it
curvature
also
of
masked
space-time
the true
is gravity.
richness of the phenomenon. The vacuum, it turns out, is sensitive not just to what things are made of, but to their shape. The geometry of the objects interacting with the quantum field acts as a set of blueprints, instructing the vacuum on how to behave.
It is a
By
condition.
changing the shape of the interacting surfaces,
The
you change the
paradox
boundary
dissolves.
conditions for the virtual
A
particles.
ghost born from
You
an
alter the
old
spectrum
way
of
thinking.
waves that can flicker in and out of existence within the gap. You are in a very real sense engaging in a form of vacuum engineering, designing structures that sculpt the energy of nothingness.
For
Think of it
star
like
systems it
acoustics.
has not yet reached.
The sound
black
in a
hole is
small
still
square
there.
room is
They
completely
exist
different from the
inside.
sound in a vast domed cathedral. The shape of the walls determines which frequencies resonate and which are dampened. The Casimir effect works in a similar way, but the sound is the hum of quantum fluctuations and the walls are the physical objects themselves. Physicists began to calculate what would happen with different shapes. What about a sphere held close to a flat plate? What about two spheres? Or a cylinder inside another cylinder? Or even more complex corrugated surfaces with microscopic teeth like a tiny cone? Each new geometry yielded a different answer. Unique quantum signature. The calculations
With the
became
Event Horizon
immensely
telescope,
complex, pushing
we have
the
stared
boundaries
into
of
the
computational
abyss,
physics,
capturing
but
the
the
shadow
results
of the
were
void
astonishing.
cast against superheated gas.
They showed that geometry alone could be used to tune the strength of the force, and in some exotic cases, could even produce repulsion without the need for an intervening liquid. For instance, theoretical models proposed that with cleverly designed interlocking gear-like nanostructures, the Casimir force could be made to push sideways, generating a quantum torque. Other calculations suggested that certain highly asymmetric objects
The
could
black
experience
hole
a
is what
repulsive
remains when
force
you
from a
strip
flat
away
plate
all of
in a
matter's
pure
complexities.
vacuum, a feat
What is
once
left
thought
is its
impossible.
raw influence
These
on the
weren't
shape
just
of
mathematical
reality.
games. They were
Does it
design
vanish
principles for
forever?
a new kind of technology,
Or is it
one built
encoded
not
on the
from wires and
horizon's surface
circuits,
like a
but from the
cosmic
precise
hologram?
shaping of materials to command
Regardless
the
of
hidden
origin,
forces of
whether
the void.
star or encyclopedia,
The
black
dream was to
hole is
create
indistinguishable.
nanostructures whose
It
very
truly has
form
no
would
memory
dictate
of what
their
it ate.
quantum environment, allowing them to levitate, repel, or self-assemble with breathtaking precision, all powered by the endless energy of empty space. The Casimir effect was no longer just a curious, attractive force. It was becoming a versatile and powerful tool in the quantum architect's
With the Event
toolkit.
Horizon telescope,
For years, this
we have
vision of a
stared into the
repulsive
abyss,
Casimir force
capturing
remained
the shadow of
confined
the
to the
void
chalkboards
cast
and
against
supercomputers
superheated
of
gas.
theorists. The
result
experimental
is a
challenge was
permanent
monumental,
scar on
bordering
reality,
on
a
insurmountable.
region that has seceded
Measuring
from
the
the rest
attractive
of the
force was
universe.
already a heroic effort,
Once a black hole
requiring the
settles
detection
down,
of forces
all
billions of
information about
times
what it was
weaker
made of
than
is
the weight
gone
of a grain
forever.
of salt. To measure repulsion, experimentalists would have to go even further.
This resolves the no-hair
They would
theorem,
need to create a
which
perfectly
states a black
stable
hole is
system
defined by
where a
only
microscopic object could
The
be held
event
in
horizon
place,
is shown not as a
levitating
physical
against
surface,
gravity and all
but a
other stray
purely
forces,
geometric
purely
frontier,
by the
where
gentle
the escape
push of the
velocity
quantum vacuum.
exceeds the speed
They
of
would have to engineer materials with precisely the right dielectric properties and build instruments sensitive enough to distinguish a tiny repulsive shove from all the thermal
From
noise
the edge
and
of the
environmental
abyss, the
vibrations
view
that threaten
expands to reveal a
swamp the
stable,
signal.
albeit precarious,
The
orbit.
slightest imperfection,
The amount of
the
bending
tiniest
is
speck
shown
of
to
dust,
perfectly match
an
Einstein's
infinitesimal
predictions,
change in
a
temperature
staggering
could ruin
confirmation
the
that
entire
flashes in
experiment.
newspaper headlines.
It was a
General
quest
relativity
for a
has
quantum
passed every
ghost,
test.
an
Its
invisible
predictions
force that
dramatically
only
confirmed in the
existed under a
silent
very
chaos surrounding
specific and
these invisible
fragile
titans.
set of circumstances. Many believed it would never be done that the
black
repulsive
hole's
Casimir
gravity is that
effect
hardened
would remain a
footprint.
beautiful
The
but
event
unprovable
horizon is
prediction
the
of our
moment.
theories. Then, in 2009, a team of researchers led by Jeremy Munday and Federico Capasso at Harvard University announced
And
that they
so,
had succeeded.
as the comet
They had
blazed across
captured
the night
ghost.
sky
Their
exactly as
experiment was a
predicted,
masterpiece of
the triumph
nanoscale
of
engineering,
Newtonian
a perfect fusion of theoretical
Every
insight and
gravitational
practical
wave,
genius.
every
Instead
image
of
of a
parallel
black hole
plates,
shadow
they used a
carries
tiny
subtle
gold-coated
clues,
polystyrene
hints.
sphere just a few
The
microns in
question,
diameter,
how does it get
attached
out,
to the
is
exquisitely
flawed.
sensitive arm
Like
of an
asking how
atomic
the
force
dent
microscope.
escapes from the hole
This
at its
sphere
center.
was their probe.
We
Below it,
arrive
they placed
at
a
the
flat
final
plate of
threshold
silica
of our
glass.
journey.
This was their
Back at
three-part
the edge
system,
of the
their quantum
ultimate
stage,
question.
gold, liquid, and silica. The crucial element was the liquid. They submerged the entire apparatus in bromobenzene. Theory had predicted that this specific combination, this particular triad
the escape
of dielectric
velocity
properties,
becomes
was the
300,000
perfect
kilometers
recipe
per
for
second,
repulsion.
the speed
gold
of light.
sphere and the
In
silica
this
plate would
Newtonian view,
conspire through
gravity
the
is
medium of
shown
the
as an invisible
bromobenzene
tether,
to
a
invert the
rope
pressure
reaching
of the
out from
void.
the Earth to pull the apple down.
As they slowly, painstakingly lowered the golden
This
sphere towards
cosmic
the silica
crime
plate,
scene
they
reveals
watched
the
their
black
instruments
hole's
with breathless
gravitational
anticipation.
fingerprints.
The distance closed. 40 nanometers, 30, 20. At these scales, the attractive Casimir force should have been screamingly obvious, pulling the sphere down with an ever-increasing strength. But their instruments showed the opposite. As the sphere drew closer to the plate, a gentle, persistent force began to push it times away asterisk.
From the singularity.
The needle on their detector, which should have bent downwards, began to creep
The slope,
upwards.
the
It was
downhillness,
undeniable.
is shown to
It
be
was
a
stable.
property of the
It
mountain's
was real.
shape.
They
The
had measured a
geometry of the
repulsive
ground,
quantum force.
which doesn't need to
They had
travel
made a
anywhere.
microscopic object levitate on a cushion of pure nothingness, a cushion woven from the frenetic energy of virtual particles. The experiment was a landmark
The
triumph,
paradox emerges
a
again.
stunning vindication
The black
of
hole
Lifshitz's
is a perfect
decades-old
prison,
theory.
a one-way door, yet its
It was the
gravity
first time humanity had not just observed the energy of the void, but had actively manipulated and reversed its effect. The data points on their
The
graph,
probe's glowing
each
path
one
line
representing a
terminates at the
precise
singularity,
measurement of this
signifying
impossible
its
push,
inevitable fate,
formed a
a one-way
perfect
trip
curve
to the heart of the
that
void.
matched the
This
theoretical
resolves the
predictions
no-hair
exactly.
theorem, which
It
states
was
a
more
black
than
hole
just a
is defined by
successful
only three
experiment.
properties:
It was a
mass,
profound
electric
dialogue
charge,
with reality.
and spin.
The universe, when asked the right question in the right way, had given a clear and unambiguous answer.
Space-time itself.
Yes, the void can
And
push.
the rim of this
Yes,
bottomless
its
pit
fundamental
is the
properties
event
can be
horizon,
engineered.
the point
The
where the slope
implications
becomes
were
so
and still
vertical
are
that all
staggering.
paths
It
lead
opened the
down.
door to a future of frictionless,
From just
levitating
outside the
micro
event
machines
horizon,
devices whose
nothing
moving
can
parts
escape.
never touch, held apart
Yet,
by a perpetual
light years
frictionless
away,
quantum spring. This discovery fundamentally changed our relationship with the vacuum. It was no longer a passive, immutable backdrop to reality. It was a medium, a pliable and responsive substance that we could learn to control. The successful demonstration of both attraction and repulsion solidified the Casimir Effect's position as a cornerstone of modern physics. It was not some esoteric fringe idea, but a direct, measurable consequence of our most successful and profound description of reality, quantum field theory. QFT is the grand synthesis of quantum mechanics and special relativity, the theory that describes all known forces and particles as excitations in underlying
golden
fields that
leash
permeate
extending
all of
from the
space.
sun
In this picture,
represents
the
the
vacuum is not empty.
instantaneous
It is the ground state, the lowest energy
core
level of
reaction
all these
ceases,
quantum fields
and
combined.
with it,
The Casimir Effect in
outward
all its
pressure.
forms is the most
In the
direct
Newtonian
evidence
view,
we have
gravity
for this
radiates
zero-point
outward as
energy
a
of the
force,
vacuum.
drawing objects like
It
this
is the proof
exoplanet
that even
into
in
its
its quietest
grasp.
state, the universe is alive with a deep, resonant hum of potentiality. Seeing two objects pull together or pushed apart by this energy is like seeing the surface of a perfectly still lake ripple, proving the existence of the water beneath. The ability to engineer this force, to flip it from a cosmic glue to a quantum cushion, elevates its importance even further. It affirms that the rules of the quantum world, while often strange and counterintuitive, are not beyond our influence. We are learning the language of the void, and with that language, we can begin to write new sentences to construct new realities at the nanoscale. The repulsive Casimir force is a statement of intent. It declares that we are no longer just passive observers of the universe's quantum machinery. We are becoming its architects, learning to draw up blueprints that command the behavior of nothingness itself. This is not merely an incremental step forward in our understanding. It represents a fundamental shift in our capabilities. It tells us that the properties we once thought were fixed constants of nature are in fact variables in an equation we are only now learning how to solve. And as we stand on this new frontier looking out at the possibilities, the journey into the void takes on an even deeper
All other
meaning.
details
We are
are
not
trapped
just
inside the
exploring what it
horizon.
is,
Their
we are beginning
information
to
lost
imagine
because
what we
it
can
cannot
make it
influence
become.
the external
And so the
geometry.
ghost in the machine was finally captured. What began as a peculiar footnote in a paper about paint, a strange mathematical artifact
A close-up on
buried
Mercury
deep
revealed
within
the
the
first
nascent
clue,
field of
a
quantum
tiny
electrodynamics,
yet significant
had finally
discrepancy
stepped
between the
out from the
predicted
shadows
orbit
of
and the
theory
observed
and
data.
into the harsh empirical light of the laboratory. We have
The black
followed this
hole is
thread of
this principle
discovery
at
from
its
its quiet,
magnificent
almost
extreme.
accidental genesis in the mind
It was
of Hendrik
here,
Casimir,
amidst the
through
mundane,
decades of
that a
scientific
young
skepticism,
clerk dared
where
to
it was
imagine the
regarded as
very
little more
fabric
than a
of
curiosity,
space-time.
a phantom of the equations.
The black hole's
We
influence
witnessed
is
the
this
heroic
permanent,
efforts to
static
measure
feature,
a force so faint
fossilized
it is like
imprint
trying to weigh a
etched into the
single falling snowflake in the middle of a hurricane.
We are
A force
approaching the
born
boundary
not
known
from
as the
charge,
event
not from
horizon.
magnetism, not from the familiar heft of gravity, but from the very structure of nothingness itself. The journey to prove its existence was an odyssey of precision, a testament to human ingenuity pushed to its absolute limits. It demanded mirrors polished to an atomic smoothness, environments shielded from every conceivable vibration, from the rumble of distant traffic to the subtle seismic shifts of the planet itself.
The
It
gravitational
required
influence creates
technology
a deafening
capable of
roar.
sensing a pressure
Yet, within the
thousands of
event
times
horizon,
weaker
there
than
is
the
only
gentle force
absolute
of
silence
sunlight
and
pressing on your
blackness.
skin. And in that silent, shielded
The immense
chamber, when
complexity
Stephen
of the
Lamoro
collapsing
and his
star
team
is erased,
finally saw their
and the black
torsion
hole is
pendulum
defined
twist,
by only mass.
moved by an unseen hand, they were not just measuring a
We saw
force,
the photon
they were
ring.
touching the void.
Light bent into a perfect,
They were confirming one of the
glowing
most
loop.
bizarre, most counterintuitive, and most profound predictions in the history of science, that the vacuum, the absolute emptiness we once imagined to be the canvas of creation,
With
is in
these three
fact a
numbers,
riot
you know
of
everything that
relentless,
can be known from the
seething
outside.
activity.
Its entire
This is the
identity
ultimate
written
legacy
into
of the
static,
Casimir Effect. It is a permanent and irreversible correction to our perception of reality. It forces us to confront
At
a
the event
universe
horizon,
far
the
stranger
escape
and
velocity
more
becomes
alive than our senses
300,000
could
kilometers
ever lead
per
us to
second,
believe.
the speed
The
of
tranquil
light.
vacuum of classical physics is gone forever, replaced by the
A
shimmering,
tranquil
effervescent
and terrifying
ocean of the quantum
transition
field.
from
Every cubic
possibility
centimeter
to
of space
certainty.
around you, the space between your hand and this screen, the vast silent gulfs between the planets and the stars is not empty. It is the stage for an infinite unseen drama. Here, in this cosmic froth, particles of matter and antimatter erupt into existence from a loan of energy,
Newton
borrowing their
believed
brief
the
moment
universe
on the stage
operated
from
like
the
a
universe
giant,
itself.
intricate
They live
clock.
for an infinitesimal
It was a
fraction of
masterpiece
second,
of divine
a fleeting
mechanics.
heartbeat of time, before annihilating one another and repaying their energetic debt, vanishing back into the nothing from which they came. They are the universe's phantom limb.
He had divined
an itch
the
of
law of
reality
gravity,
that we
yes.
can never directly
But the
scratch,
mechanism
but whose
remained a
presence
profound
we can
mystery.
now undeniably
How could this
feel. For centuries, we defined space by what it lacked. It was the absence of things, the ultimate silence, the perfect zero. The Casimir Effect tells us this is a profound illusion.
From the
void
earliest
has a
celestial
texture,
charts to
it has a
Newton's
pulse,
groundbreaking
it has an energy,
Principia,
a deep and
humanity's
powerful hum that underpins the entire cosmos. When those two plates are brought together, they don't create the force. They simply reveal what was already there.
This
They
throws
act
us
as a
back to the
filter for
paradox.
reality,
How can these
silencing the
messenger
longer
particles
wavelengths of
escape
this quantum
in at the
static
frontier of
and allowing
knowledge?
us to hear the
Weeks
whisper
later,
of
the
the
plates
void
are
that
analyzed,
remains.
showing the
The
apparent
force that
positions
pushes
of the
them
stars
together
are shifted,
is the
their
pressure of the
starlight having
entire
been bent by
universe
the sun's
outside the
gravitational
plates.
well.
A universe teeming with virtual possibilities overwhelming the sliver of censored reality between them. It is a shadow cast not by light,
It must
but
be
by the
that
absence
the
of
apple is
potential
drawn
realities.
towards the earth.
Think about what this means. The structure of our universe, the very stability of matter, is predicated on this seething ocean of non-existence. It is the dark foundational energy that prevents everything from collapsing into a featureless singularity. This zero-point energy is not some esoteric phenomenon confined to a laboratory. It is the bedrock of all being. You are, in a very real sense, a complex pattern of stability, a fortress of matter holding your form against the constant restless energy of the quantum vacuum. The discovery of this force was more than just a validation of a theory. It was a philosophical awakening. It erased the line we had drawn between something and nothing. Nothingness, it turns out, is a very busy place. It is the wellspring of potential from which reality continuously draws its existence. And with this staggering realization, a new door opens. If the vacuum is not empty, if it possesses a real physical energy that can exert a measurable force, then the inevitable human question arises: can we use it? Can we harness the power of nothing? For decades, the Casimir Effect was primarily a problem for engineers working at the smallest of scales. In the microscopic world of micro-electromechanical systems, or MEMS, the tiny engines, gears and sensors that power our modern technology, this ghostly attraction was a menace. It was a form of stiction, an inexplicable tendency for tiny components separated by a vacuum to suddenly snap together and fuse, ruining a delicate device. Engineers went to great lengths to design around this quantum gremlin, treating it as a fundamental nuisance of the micro-world. But today our perspective is shifting, turning this problem on its head. What if we could learn to control this force? What if instead of fighting it, we could build with it? Imagine a new generation of nanotechnology where the Casimir Effect is not a bug but a feature. Picture molecular-scale machines with components that never physically touch, held in perfect alignment by the carefully tuned pressure of the void.
The black hole.
Bearings with zero friction levitating on a cushion of vacuum energy. Switches that flip without physical contact, moved by the subtle manipulation of the quantum fields around them. This is not science fiction. Labs around the world are already exploring this frontier. They are experimenting with materials shaped into complex geometries, ridges, cones, and corrugated surfaces to sculpt the vacuum.
The journey leads us back to the black hole.
By changing the shape of the
place where the
boundaries,
universe
you change
is
the
twisted
virtual
into an
particle modes
impossible
that can
knot.
exist. And in doing so, you can tune the Casimir force. You can make it stronger, weaker, or most remarkably of all, you can potentially reverse it. The repulsive Casimir Effect. It sounds like a paradox, a force of attraction that pushes instead of pulls. Yet theoretical models and early experiments suggest
Once
it
a
is
black
possible.
hole settles down, all
By inserting
information
a
about what it was
specific
made
medium
of
between
is
the
gone
plates,
forever.
or by engineering their surfaces with incredibly complex topologies, it may be possible to create a pocket of vacuum energy that is higher than the energy of the vacuum outside. The result would be a push from nothingness, a quantum levitation. The implications are breathtaking. Materials that repel each other in a
The
vacuum
probe's
without
glowing
any
pathline
magnetism
terminates
or
at the
electrostatic
singularity,
charge.
signifying its inevitable fate.
Self-assembling
a one-way trip to the
nanostructures that
heart
snap
of the
into
void.
place, not through chemical bonds, but through precisely engineered vacuum forces, building complex architectures from the bottom up using the universe's own
The journey
quantum
leads us
scaffolding.
back to
This
the black
is a
hole,
path toward a manufacturing
place where the
revolution,
universe is
one where we
twisted
build
into an
not just with
impossible
atoms,
knot.
but with the very fabric of space-time that contains them. But the dream doesn't stop at the microscopic scale. The ultimate prize, the holy grail sought by physicists and engineers alike, is to harness this energy for something far grander propulsion. Could we one day build a ship that sails on the quantum sea?
The Earth's gravity
A
works on the
drive
same
that pushes
principle.
not against
You are
expelled
following
fuel,
a
but
microscopic
against the
curve
vacuum
in
of space
space-time
itself.
created by our planet's
This is the
mass.
domain of the hypothetical Casimir drive.
When we see
or
stars
quantum
orbiting
vacuum thruster,
Sagittarius
the
AX,
seared one-day
we see
ship.
them skating
Concept,
on a
while
frozen,
highly
invisible
speculative,
bowl
is seductively simple in its elegance. If you can create a region of space where the Casimir force is asymmetrical, stronger in one direction than the other, you could in theory generate a net thrust. Imagine a specially designed cavity that somehow modulates the vacuum energy, creating a high-pressure zone behind it and a low-pressure zone in front of it. The craft would be perpetually pushed forward by the imbalance surfing on a wave of its own making in the quantum foam. It would be a reactionless drive requiring no propellant to be ejected out the back.
The black hole
its fuel
is a
tank
silent
would be the
lens,
infinite, unending energy of the
paths of
vacuum that
photons
permeates
are
all of space. The challenges,
A
of course, are
supernova
monumental,
explosion
bordering
scatters
on
the heavy
insurmountable
elements
with our
forged
current
in its
understanding
core.
of physics and engineering. The forces we can generate today are minuscule, far too small to move anything larger than a microscopic cantilever. Manipulating the vacuum energy on a scale large enough to propel a spacecraft would require technologies we can barely imagine and energies that may rival those of a star. We do not yet know if it is even possible to create such an imbalance without violating fundamental laws of physics like the conservation of momentum. Many scientists believe it is a dead end, a beautiful but flawed idea. But science is littered with dead ends that turned out to be new highways. The dream persists because the energy is undeniably there. It is real. We have measured its force.
We see stars
the vacuum
billions
is a
of miles
reservoir
away,
of energy so
orbiting its
vast it
unseen
defies
center.
comprehension. The total zero-point
As a
energy
massive
contained
object
within a volume
rests
as
upon the
small as a
fabric of
single light bulb
space-time,
is
it
estimated
creates
to
a
be
deep
enough to boil
gravitational
all the
well.
oceans of the Earth. The vast majority of this energy is inaccessible to us, locked away in a perfectly balanced state. But the Casimir effect proves that this balance can be disturbed. It proves that the energy of the void can be made to do real physical work, and that slender, tantalizing proof is enough to ignite the imagination, to fuel the quest to see if we can one day build a key to unlock that infinite reservoir. Whether we ever build quantum levers or vacuum-powered starships remains a story for future generations to write. But the journey we have taken has already given us a gift of far greater value. It has fundamentally reshaped our place in the cosmos.
It was then that he understood.
We have peered
same
into the
influence
absolute
that
heart
pulls
of
the apple
emptiness
down
and found
also
it
holds the
teeming with a
moon in its
ferocious,
orbit.
vibrant life. We have learned that the universe is woven from a fabric of ghostly, ephemeral particles, a constant storm of creation and annihilation.
As we
from
peer
which
through the
stable,
veil of permanent
predictable world of our
silence,
senses
we are
somehow
forced to
emerges.
confront the
The
ultimate
Casimir
boundary,
effect is a monument
the
to the
event
power of
horizon.
human curiosity. It is a reminder that the deepest truths of the universe are not always grand and loud like exploding stars or colliding galaxies. Sometimes they are found in the quietest, most subtle of whispers, a whisper from the space between things, a whisper that tells us that nothing is sacred, not even nothing itself. So the next time you gaze up into the velvet blackness of the night sky, into the seemingly barren abyss between the distant glittering stars, remember what you have seen here. You are not looking at an absence. You are not looking at a void. You are looking at the engine room of reality, a place of infinite potential, of hidden energy, and of forces that we are only just beginning to comprehend. The universe is not just the things you can see, it is also the space between them. And that space we now know is everything.